And in fact, she used to tell me stories when she was in college at Michigan State University of squeezing the tooth. She showed me how to do it, squeezing the last of the toothpaste out of the tube by putting it in the door jamb and closing the door against it, to get that last little bit out. That's how broke she was. And yet, she could go to college and graduated from Michigan State, magna cum laude, and paid for it by working a summer job as a lifeguard up in Charlevoix. So we've done it before, we can do it again. That's the principal thing that I would say. Marshall, I need to move along, but it's great to hear from you, and I hope you call again. Thank you. Tim in Swansboro, North Carolina. Hey, Tim, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. I just wanted to bring this up. I was so infuriated with the PGA LIV merger, but then I thought after yesterday, for Trump, the best of times, worst of times, all in a matter of days for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not a done deal yet, by the way. There is a substantial movement to oppose this, and there are multiple lawsuits trying to oppose this merger, suggesting that it's not legal. I'm not sure that they would succeed. These are private entities, and they should, generally speaking, be allowed to do whatever they want. But I think that there's a very good chance that merger, not a very good chance, but I think there's a chance that merger won't happen. So we'll all have to keep our eye on that. Tim, thank you for the call. And my apologies to everybody else who's on hold. There's always next week. And thanks so much for calling in today. Special thanks to Louise Hartman, Sean Taylor, Nate Atwell, Jamie Holly, Joyce the Hammer Nance, Nigel Peacock, Sue Nethercutt, Patrick Hoyt, Geraldine Halbert, Ron Hartenbaum, Chase Spross, Nicholas Miller, Pat Sweeney, Jay LeBlanc, Al Gorilla, Connor Arroyo, Carna Verde, our friend Richie Mann, who has been beaten, who is our one of our moderators. Thank you to all of you, and please help out Richie. Get out there, get active, have a tag you're in. Have a great weekend. I'll catch up with you on Monday.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
What if you could help turn back the clock and help your dog play like a puppy again, no matter their age? Introducing Dr. Marty Pett's Nature's Blend, a premium freeze-dried raw dog food called the Miracle Worker by Forbes magazine. Dr. Marty is now helping dog parents right at home.
I've helped countless dogs thrive with one simple concept. Your dog needs a high-meat diet similar to what their ancestors ate in the wild.
Nature's Blend is designed to support your dog's healthy lifespan with turkey, beef, salmon, duck, seeds, veggies, and fruit, and with zero artificial preservatives. When given the choice between Nature's Blend and Amazon's #1 bestseller in dry dog food, 29 out of 30 dogs chose Nature's Blend first. For a limited time, save up to 54% off Nature's Blend and get free premium dog treats. Go to drmartypets.com/Tom or text Tom to 511-511. Text THOM to 511-511.
I'm so confident your dog will love it. Your order is backed with a 90-day guarantee.
Study available upon request. Message and data rates may apply.
If you want to stay informed about Midwestern politics, check out Heartland Signal. We are WCPT 820's multimedia newsroom, and we cover everything from local politics and state legislative sessions to updates about the 2024 presidential election. For the latest information, you can find digital news updates at heartlandsignal.com and new video content on our Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube accounts at Heartland Signal, where facts matter.
Hi, I'm Kathy Bates. Anyone will tell you battling cancer is not pretty, and neither are the complications like lymphedema, a chronic disease that can leave anyone undergoing cancer treatment with a lifetime of swelling and pain, often affecting one's entire body and sense of self. If you're facing a cancer diagnosis, discuss lymphedema with your doctor. With knowledge and action, we can learn and live. Learn more at lymphaticnetwork.org.
This is AP News. I'm Rita Foley. Former President Trump is calling on his supporters to join a protest tomorrow at the federal courthouse in Miami, where he will hear the charges against him, keeping classified documents in violation of the law. The AP's Donna Warder.
Trump supporters are planning to load buses to head to Miami, raising concerns for law enforcement officials who are preparing for potential unrest around the courthouse. Miami Mayor Francis Suarez is expected today to announce additional details about how the city will prepare repair.
It's going to take months to completely rebuild that part of I-95 in Philadelphia that collapsed yesterday after a tanker truck caught fire. The AP's Jackie Quinn.
It happened in the northbound lanes of I-95. A vehicle fire below the elevated portion of the highway.
All right, sending Pam Morris Walton through.
Okay. Heat caused an elevated section of interstate.
Mrs. Walton?
Good morning, Santita.
How are you?
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. I'm the same. I am so wonderful. I woke up this morning, Santita. I woke up this morning, honey. I was on his wake-up list.
No.
I'm doing well.
No, there's that.
Yeah.
There's always that.
Yes. How are you?
I'm doing well. Well. Just let me know. I definitely want to get together with you because I have an idea that I'm going to need your guidance on.
Okay.
And
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I really need that because there are some things that I think that we need to do. You know,
mm-hmm.
And
it has your name. It has your name on it.
Well, I think I want to carry a tradition forward that you all have. You know, I see you in Bernadine Washington and Isabel Joseph Johnson tradition. And, you know, one of my godmothers was also Irene Johnson Ware out of Mobile. And Mary Mason out of Philadelphia. So it's the first time I was actually on the radio was with Mary Mason in Philadelphia. I think I was about 6. And my father was speaking in Philly, but, you know, she was like one of my godmothers. So when I got to Philadelphia, I was staying with her, and I was so excited. Then, of course, I had to go to work with her the next morning. And and she put me on the radio, and I was like, oh, okay. Oh, boy. She put me on the radio. Oh, bless her heart. You can't make this stuff up. And here I am.
Hey, this is real.
Oh, I wish I could talk to her now. She's got dementia. And but you know what? What a life, you know? What a life.
Yeah. I have some people going through that, and my mother passed from advanced dementia, so I understand.
You know, that's why, you know, I wanted to ask you some things and get some guidance from you.
Mm-hmm.
So I am going to.
I am there.
Well, I cannot wait because I think it could be a good thing here. And, you know, I want us to go forward. I mean, so I'm very excited about that. I was trying to get these, you know, I tried to get this, my news flash from, what was it called, from CNN, and my goodness. They have changed their times that they do this. It's like, what are you doing? Whatever. Leave. I can go to my own.
Go ahead. I'm here. All right. Once I finish, I'm going to jump off. Okay.
Okay. No worries. No worries.
Get to the prayer. Okay.
But thank you. Thank you so much. Because this means so much what you're doing here.
It's an honor.
Well, I'm honored that you take the time. So thank you for that, because I know that you are fitting me in. And all the things that you are doing. No, I know it's true. Oh my God, no, she is like, okay, no, honey, I'm gonna get you in. Oh, and my brother Jonathan sent his love to you.
Oh my goodness.
He said, give Miss Pam.
Give it back to him.
I will.
Give it back to him.
Just so that you know.
He's doing well.
Oh, he's doing well, but he was giving that to you.
Thank you. I receive it.
Oh, absolutely. He was giving that to you, just so that you know.
Okay.
He said, you got her on? What y'all talking about? Oh, I love my brother. Bless his. He said, yeah. He said, let her get you started. I said, all right. So he wanted to send you all of his love.
Thank you.
You are more than welcome. Let me get this piece.
Got all these stories. Boy, it just does not. Whew. Okay, got that last bit. Okay, you know what? I can barely hear the radio. Okay.
In the small town of Elmira, New York,
I always have to
a boy was born into an all-American family.
Make sure I'm making
I get you.
The odds of him opening his own clothing store at the age of 18, 1 in 138,000. Excited to be a part of pop culture, he packed for the big city. The odds of finding someone to invest in his vision? 1 in 4.5 million. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 68. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. I encourage you to learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs. Early diagnosis can make a lifetime of difference. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
All right, 60 seconds.
Executive producer of the documentary film
Thank you.
I'm here to tell you that defeating cancer takes breakthroughs. A breakthrough is the start of something extraordinary. To be breakthrough is to be brave. Many small breakthroughs can lead inevitably to a big breakthrough. The kinds of breakthroughs that advance the fight against cancer. The ones that save lives by the millions. You are the breakthrough. You, the patients, taking part in clinical trials. You, the scientists, doing next-level research to be...
Okay, everybody, let's get right to it.
Nurses who tirelessly care for everyone along the way. Let's be the breakthrough.
To learn about screenings and clinical trials that may be right for you, go to Stand Up to Cancer.
10 seconds.
Breakthrough. Stand Up to Cancer is a program of the Entertainment Industry Foundation. Please talk to your healthcare provider about appropriate screenings and clinical trials that may be right for you.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, my home up in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So much love today. What are we talking about? Of course, we're talking about the Trump indictment. What is happening, everybody? What is going on? Indeed, Miami is bracing for protests. Indeed, former President Donald Trump has asked his supporters to meet him there as he goes to court tomorrow to face more than 30 felony charges. These charges could keep him in prison for the rest of his life. What do you think about this? Even as polls show, most polls show that most Americans, at least a majority of Americans, not an overwhelming, but a majority, feel that these charges are correct. But then that same majority feel that these charges, 60% feel that these charges are politically motivated. So how pure is this process? I want to know what your thoughts are. 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT, and I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. And Ashley, you're already over there. Ooh, and Dave, you're already on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. And Jewel, hey, up there in New York, sending you all much love. I hope that you'll be coming to the Rainbow Push International Conference here, July 15th to the 19th. It's going to be great. Go to rainbowpush.org. rainbowpush.org so that you can find out the hotels. In fact, we're working on another hotel, and you can find out where we're going to be, what we're going to be doing. It's going to be a lot of fun, everybody. And we're going to move out of this virtual space into a real space, into reality. We don't need a computer-generated space. We need to see one another so that we can talk about the great issues of our day. And this is one of those issues, everybody. How will this indictment or these indictments impact the 2024 election? What's going to happen? Will it steal his base? That is, make them dig in their heels, will more and more people come and support him? I'm wondering what's going to happen here. What's going to happen here? What's going to happen? I want to know what your thoughts are. 773-763-9278. Meet my morning stars on Facebook on the Santita Jackson and Friends page and on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. That's Dave Dowling and Daryl and Max. Hey, up there in D.C. And wow, what happened in Philadelphia? The I-95 collapsed. That's like the main artery going from on the East Coast from north to south. And of course, we're I-94, but when you get to the East Coast, it's the I-95. One cannot even imagine, say, the Eisenhower and the Kennedy collapsing. Well, that's the equivalent of what happened. So we pray for our brothers and sisters up in Philadelphia. Shirley up in beautiful Philadelphia, I hope that you are safe and hope that no one you know was involved in that collapse. Sending you all so much love today. Let's get to some of these headlines, everybody. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Of course, top of mind for everyone. Former President Trump will be appearing in court this week, tomorrow, as he answers these federal charges, everybody, these federal charges, these federal indictments. Indeed, this is the first time in the history of the United States that a former president has received federal indictments. That's something that President Nixon was able to avoid because he resigned and was pardoned. So what do you think about that? Indeed, Donald Trump will return to the campaign trail. And so we're going to see what's going to happen, everybody. What about these 4 young children found alive after 40 days wandering in the Amazon jungle following a plane crash that killed their mother? But they survived, everybody. And their father said as he went to go meet his children, one of whom was just 1 year old, he kept hope alive, if you will. He felt that his children had survived. God bless him. The children managed to survive by eating cassava flour. Colombian President Gustavo Petro celebrated their return and said their remarkable story would be remembered in history. God bless these children, everybody. And those are just some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show in Chicago. We're going to have a high of 67 degrees. A little cool today. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 81 degrees, partly cloudy. In the NBA, well, the Heat and the Nuggets will be playing tonight. The Nuggets could close it out. They could win. They're leading in their series 3-1. It would be the first time in the 47-year history of the franchise that they would be NBA champions. Will they do it? We're going to see tonight. In the NHL, the Panthers will be facing off against the Golden Knights. The Golden Knights have an opportunity to close it out tomorrow night. We're going to see. This is the time when all of these people are fighting for the championships. We love it. We love it. In the WNBA, the Aces bested the Sky 93-80. But the Lynx, well, they were triumphant over the Sparks 91-86. In Major League Baseball, the Blue Jays 7, the Twins 6, the Giants 13, and the Cubs 3. And those are some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. We've got this praying woman with us, of course. The anointed Pam Morris Walton, the woman with a new heart, with a renewed heart, and we just love you so much. Always so glad to hear your voice, so privileged to be with you, and I'm so glad that you're able to really to fit us in, because you have a prayer service that you go to this early in the morning. It starts off the week just so, which is why I want to start this week off with good news. With so much that we talk about, Mrs. Walton, I want to give people something that might help them get on their way. What if they say stop by the church sometime? Something might be said to help you on your way. Stop by the church sometime. All those songs I used to hear, boy, they make a lot of sense to me now.
Yes. And they worked.
And of course, my gospel sister, your book is 57 Days. Wait for a New Heart. Complete it for me.
Sparks a spiritual journey of faith and love.
Okay, they can get it on Amazon, but they can also go to your website. What is your website?
Yes, PamMorrisSpeaks.com. That's for the autograph copy. That's when you want me to sign your name and put a few words there. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I love that. I love that. Everybody remember that. Pam Morris Speaks. Well, what is the good news?
Well, let me speak to you this morning first by saying good morning to you, good blessed morning, because all of us that are on this call woke up this morning, and he is responsible. So we're on his wake-up list, and I feel good about it. Now I want to talk a little bit this morning and encourage all hearts about success and survival. Success and survival are a daily choice of mine. Now, some persons are destined to be successful, but most of us have to be determined to be successful. Most of us have to be determined. I'm determined to be successful. What does success look like and feel like for you? Have you redefined your personal and professional goals in this year, in this 6th month of 2023? Don't live your life by chance. Every day you need to recommit to your goals. Every day. Every day you must decide if you will just get through the day or get something from the day. Time is precious. Every day is a special occasion. Every day, make a conscious choice, everyone, of what you want to welcome and keep. Not just welcome, but you want to keep it in your life. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. Today is a gift called the present. Present. Good morning, everybody. Have a good day.
Amen, amen, amen. What did you say? I was on God's wake-up list. How about that?
Yes.
I love it, I love it, I love it. So we are so
Thank
no matter
you.
what.
I love you.
I love you. I love you, everybody. Please go get the book. 57 days. Wait for a new heart. I cannot arrange some time. Absolutely. We're talking about being donors, everybody. Being donors. I know many of us are reluctant, but had it not been for a donor, she'd be resting in the arms of Jesus. But we're so glad that she's still with us today. So let's. We're going to have that conversation very, very soon. We've got Dr. Shanina Knight, an infection preventionist with us, college lecturer. Oh, she does so much. How are you doing, Dr. Knighton?
I'm doing good today. How are you?
I am doing wonderfully well. So what do you want to talk about today?
So I think, Santita, like one of the most important things to acknowledge for people is, I would say, the role of an infection preventionist, and just, I would say not even just infection preventionists, but individuals that constantly are working behind the scenes to understand germs just in general. So I would actually have that conversation with the gentleman yesterday, and he instantly went on the defense when he said, "You're an infection preventionist." He said, "So what, these germs just come from nowhere?" And I had to acknowledge, or just, really acknowledge that some people just don't know. And with that, I went through to him where diseases come from, where illnesses come from. And it's the fact that when we think about life on its smallest form of, let's just say, being bacteria, being fungus, being mold, which is a form of fungus, right? If we think about viruses, these are things that exist around us before we made it on this earth. They'll continue to evolve. In the same way that we change, it's the same way that they change over time. The difference is we and our environment are one and the same, so we're constantly interacting with our environment. So whether that is us consuming, the plants, the meat, if that is us, inhaling the air, if that is us, absorbing something, we are very connected to the environment. And I expressed to him that when you have, let's say, natural disasters that occur, there's standing water, there may be an issue. That standard water may mix in with, let's say, food. Standard water contains bacteria. There's different elements that will occur as a result of water standing. That means that, for example, when we have water that we drink and someone is sanitizing it, and when I'm saying sanitizing the water, someone has to clean our water in order for it to be for us to be able to drink. They have to separate sewage water from clean water. If they don't separate clean water from sewage water, imagine the fact that our body gets rid of toxins and waste. If our body gets rid of toxins and waste, and that water with toxins and waste mix in with clean water that our body needs to consume, then essentially those toxins and that waste is what's filled with illnesses that can make our body sick. So my ultimate takeaway, Santita, when I mention the differences between something, let's say, just popping up, as people like to put it, is how are we interacting with the environment? How is our interactions with the environment influencing the evolution of bacteria, funguses, and viruses into diseases that can then harm the human body? When we are, again, ingesting, inhaling, or absorbing material, we have to understand everything is going to be safe. We have to understand that animals may be sick. Animals may require some sort of medical treatment before they become a part of our plate. If that is the case, we have to be aware that if they are being treated with antibiotics, if they are being treated with antifungals and antivirals, some of that is going to somehow transmit to our body as well when we ingest it. It's not going to kill off everything. Hence, it is protein, and it's supposed to be able to give people some sort of nutritional value. It's supposed to be. But it doesn't necessarily mean that things are perfect. Hence, when we hear, that there is a E. coli, outbreak, when we hear that something has some sort of disease. And I'm sure we've seen all of the outbreaks that may occur on the news sometimes with food. This is how these things occur. Because if something is not cooked, if something is underprepared, if there is cross-contamination, we tend to end up with those illnesses because things are still moving around us when we talk about living organisms, some of which may not necessarily work in our favor, but in fact they may hurt us.
Well, hold on. Let me ask you about that. Because, I watch all these cooking shows now. I love them. I'm obsessed. And I've always liked my meats well done. And I've always been cautioned by the women who raised me, but now my brothers, they're the cooks in the family. They really, really cook. That, when you cook pork, it needs to be cooked. You need to cook pork all the way through. And yet I watch many of the cooking shows. And, I think it's also cultural. Black folks cook things all the way through. And we want it to be crispy. Other people don't as much. It's not a value judgment I'm making. I'm just trying to find out what's the safest way to have your meat if you are a meat eater.
So that's the thing. There's a disclaimer that shows up, and it's on the bottom of restaurant menus. It is required for them to put it on there. And it's saying that consuming raw or undercooked food can bring about illness. Foodborne illnesses is simultaneously used with food poisoning. And it's the illness caused by food contaminated with bacteria, viruses, parasites, or toxins, as I'm mentioning. And so these infectious organisms that's in the food, they're the most common cause of food poisoning. And food poisoning is very common. So I get it. There's about 330 million people in the U.S., but there's literally more than 3 million food poisoning or foodborne illness cases per year.
Is that number high? I mean, for a society that's supposed to be as wealthy and as advanced as the United States?
That number is very high.
Okay.
That number, if
how I mentioned to you, Santita, how we only have 1 million hospital beds.
Oh my gosh, not even, right?
Exactly. And so those 3 million cases don't even account for some of the other illnesses that may exist. And it's unexpected. So when people end up having foodborne illness, this may equate to wages that are lost. This equates to time lost off of work. They're not expecting that. And it happens in a considerable amount of ways. So it's not just about consuming raw, undercooked food, but I've seen situations where people will put raw meat on the counter and not wipe that counter down cleanly or clean that counter accurately, and then someone's put something up there that cannot be washed down. So if you put your bread on a counter where you just had raw chicken meat and you did not clean it properly, you're now running a risk of consuming those illnesses, like those toxins that cause illness as a result of your bread that you're going to consume, because it's not something that can be overcooked, as you mentioned, when it comes to meat. And so to your point about meat, heating it up at those high temperatures can kill off certain germs, which can lessen the risk of you having one of those foodborne illnesses. Hence, that is why those disclaimers come on the bottom of the menus. They come in so many different places where it warns you about consuming undercooked or raw foods.
Well, I mean, that's become like a real thing. And I always believed that, you're supposed to cook your food all the way through. But now I see, and people lose, these cooking competitions because, and I look at it now, I'm like, no, the black folks going to lose, because I'm like, it's a cultural thing. It's like we say, no, you cook. And my mother said, you never have pink pork, ever, ever, ever. And you cook this meat, and she said, I just didn't grow up with red meat. So, it's just a thing. The closest we can come to it is medium well. And for me, I just cook my steak if I have it all the way through. Just very quickly, I've got a couple of minutes left here. What about fruit and vegetables now? This is a time of year where you eat a lot of fruit. How do you just, when you come back from the store, do you need to clean your food, or can you just eat it?
So you should clean it. You should clean it because literally, if you're not cleaning it, you don't understand what it's come in contact with. We have to realize that even though our fruits and vegetables, and I'm talking about fresh ones, come outside of the ground, they may come out of the ground where, again, there still are toxins. Let's say if fruits and vegetables are being grown near a pig farm, where there might be feces or there might be something like that. We don't understand where everything comes from. And so, yes, someone may say farm to plate, but what does that farm to plate environment look like? And so when you hear, even in the news recently, where there's salmonella, which is, salmonella is like one of the most frequent foodborne illness outbreaks, but it's linked to fresh fruits and vegetables. And it's linked to fresh fruits and vegetables because, long story short, like if there is, it's found in a variety of foods, but if it's being exposed, if your fruits and vegetables is being exposed to something that does have salmonella, you will want to clean it off, because that's something that's going directly into your face. It's not going to be heated up to those high temperatures. And so you have to make sure that you're thoroughly cleaning it to understand that it's not being contaminated. And unfortunately, there are cases of where food may be grown in contaminated water, and sometimes that also may bring about illness. So it's not something that is rare. We've seen salmonella attached to peanut butter. So there's a significant amount of these different ways to be able to get it, but it's just being aware of what can I clean and what can I do to potentially decrease the chances of an outbreak when there's things in my control, such as being able to properly wash off food.
Well, Susan Garner out in California, my sister said, no more sushi for me. And I love sushi. But you know what? I get the sushi that's cooked. Susan, I'm sending you much love. Everybody call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Let's talk about this Trump impeachment. What will it mean? Miami is bracing for protests. What's going to happen, everybody? Some people are saying that there's a civil war. That was one of the headlines yesterday. Other people are saying that I will not vote again. A lot of folks are taking this very, very seriously. I want to know what your thoughts are. 773-763-9278. Will this help President Biden? Will it hurt him? Will it help Robert Kennedy, Marianne Williamson, Cornel West? A lot of people running. This is a big deal. Call me at 773-763-9278. Reach out to Dr. Shanina Knighton. Hey, Dr. Nina, Heydrnina, on social media. Sending you much love. Back in just a minute. Oh. Thank you, Dr. Knighton.
Okay.
No, I mean, I'm just looking at this and I'm like, oh my gosh, ooh. Because I watch these cooking shows now, right? I mean, I'm like obsessed. And love them. And girl, it's when I see the black cooks, I'm like, no. We want it fried to a crisp crunch, black folks are. And that's just how, and it's cultural differences, everybody. It doesn't make anyone, that's not a value judgment. It's just a cultural difference. But, we grew up doing the cooking in the United States too. So let's be clear on that. That's part of what we did here. So my great-grandmother, who I grew up with, thank God, my great-grandmother Matilda Burns, Mama Tibby, and my mother who learned to cook when she got married, and my mother can really, really cook now. You cook everything all the way through. You don't have, milk. We want to keep it moist and juicy. Well, there are ways to do that without having it raw.
Right.
Okay.
That part.
Now, you need to learn how to cook, darling. You're not supposed to have raw food. I'm sorry.
Listen, I'm with you. I want to see it. I want to understand what it is I'm consuming. And if it doesn't look like it's completely done, then that's a problem.
I had to ask you because I saw another one of my little shows that I love. And they were having the cooking contest, and they were like, oh, the only problem with this dish is, it's cooked, it's too well. I'm like, honey, that's a cultural thing. And I said, darling, march off that set proudly because I'm not eating any raw meat.
Sending Dwight McKee, Reverend Yuri, and Attorney Hopper through.
They like it, and I'm going to tell you, I wholeheartedly agree. And that's the thing, when people realize that parasites are real and that animals and humans have worms running around, you don't want to consume something that's going to be live like that and put it directly in your body. That's how people end up with parasites.
We'll see. Well, and so you promise the next time we go out to have a meal and I ask them to cook my meat to death, you won't laugh at me? When I met Dr. Knighton, Dwight McKee, and Reverend Dr. Yuri, and Attorney Hoffler, she looked at me because I pulled all this stuff out of my bag and I was washing my hands. I'd gone to the restroom to wash my hands, but I had all these. It was, in the middle of the pandemic. It was still lockdown. And you were like, oh my gosh, I think you've gone a little overboard. I'm like, girl, this is how I feel comfortable because I'm not meeting people out to do anything. It's because I love and trust you that I'm here.
No, listen, what I'm telling you, and it's going to sound bad, but those parasitic infections are some of the worst, and I can tell you some of the most common things that we would see in the hospital, and it would be from people eating raw or undercooked meat. And it's the craziest thing because there's actual worms. So you actually see worms, like in what it is that they excrete as waste. And that's the best way to say it. It's too graphic. But
no, it's not too graphic. You're just making CK sick. She's not going to eat anymore.
I'm officially sick. Did you say worms? I just wanted to make sure I had to come off mute. I was on mute, just praying. But then when you said worm, I said, did we say worm?
60 seconds, everyone.
40 people diagnosed with sarcoma every day, and it's life-changing.
And the bad part about it is,
life-changing
it don't
and
require you to have
devastating
to look up
because
under a microscope.
Oh my God.
I don't have to look up under a microscope to see it. Yeah, no, you can visibly see it. And if people got pets and they don't have pets that have worms, it's even worse. Like, I've actually stopped eating spaghetti as a result of that. So that was years ago.
What about spaghetti? Please don't say anything about spaghetti.
No, wait a minute. I'm telling you that, like a dog, if a dog literally has worms, to see a dog get rid of worms, it looks like spaghetti. It'll change your relationship with spaghetti.
10 seconds.
I just thought I'd tell you. I hope you are listening, Devin. Okay, everybody listen.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, July 15th through the 19th, Rainbow Push Convention. Susan, I hope you come out from California. It's going to be a great convention. We're going to be able to meet in person to talk about issues like these, everybody: education, health care, and election 2024. We're in the midst of it. What is it going to look like? Boy, oh boy, from day to day, things are changing. Now, what was expected has now come to fruition. Former President Trump has become the first former president in our history to be federally indicted. And he was indicted on 7 counts following an investigation by special counsel Jack Smith, who held a really extensive press conference last week talking about this indictment over these classified documents. And so, what do you think about this? Well, I tell you what, many of his former President Trump supporters who will be meeting him in Miami, as he asked them to do tomorrow, for protests. Hopefully they'll be peaceful, but I don't know. As I was reading Vice and Radar Online, they said, Vice News, we need to start killing. That's the headline. Trump's far-right supporters. Here's some of what they said. We need to start killing these traitorous blanks, wrote one Trump supporter on the Donald, a rabidly pro-Trump message board. Another user added this: it's not going to stop until bodies start stacking up. We are not civilly represented anymore, and they'll come for us next. Some of us, they already have, and on and on and on it goes. Does it mean that you should be intimidated and not fight for justice? These are threats that Dr. King dealt with every day. I mean, when my father ran for president, he was the most threatened presidential candidate in history. First presidential candidate to receive his protection the day that he announced. I get it. That having been said, there's something going on in this country because there is a split. Roughly half of us agree that the former president not only should be indicted but should go to jail. The other half don't agree with that. 60% of us believe that these charges are politically motivated, even as we believe that the charges are correct. But if they're politically motivated, it means they're not pure. So there's something going on here, and that can take a turn real fast. So let's talk about this. First of all, let's look at what we're looking at. What are the charges? And really, what are the political consequences? We're going to have Jeff Cohen from RootsAction.net .org as he talks to us about this, and a campaign that they have launched asking President Biden not to run anymore. They said, look, really, we need a strong candidate to fight this. So we've got a lot to talk about, not to mention the fact that there are many issues that are now being pushed off the table as we deal with this, which is a big deal. We've got Reverend Dr. Todd Urey, Esquire, brilliant pastor and lawyer, and we've got Dwight McKee, Dr. D, of course, but we're going to start things off with you in a couple of minutes. Can you kind of summarize, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, what we're looking at with these 7 charges? Many people are saying that he can, many legal experts such as yourself and Reverend Dr. Urey, Esquire, you all are saying that he could be in prison for the rest of his life. Attorney C.K. Hoffler.
Good morning, Santita. Good morning, everyone. Well, this is really, as you said, it's unprecedented. It's the first time in history that we're seeing this happen. And even for those who believe it's politically motivated, I do believe that the Justice Department has laid a strong foundation and predicate for these charges to stick and to go forward. Putting aside the fact that the case is being assigned to someone who we believe may stall, delay, and may not be completely impartial. But putting that aside, what do we see? Well, these charges are based on, and this indictment is based on, the documents that were found at his residence. This is a 44-page indictment that was filed in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Florida, that he endeavored to obstruct the FBI and the grand jury investigation and conceal retention of classified documents. So this is very, very specific, Santita, to not just any old documents, not just documents that may be touched on national security, documents that were labeled classified. Whether he could have reclassified them or not is no longer the issue, because the 31, and these are 37 felony counts. Felony meaning he will go to jail if he's convicted on these, of course, for life. 31 of the counts are for willful retention of classified documents, meaning he intentionally did it. There was no mistake. There was no accident. There was no, oh my goodness, I didn't even know I had these. He willfully retained classified documents, 31 of the counts. One count is for conspiracy to obstruct justice, because, of course, he resisted. There were months and months of negotiations with the FBI to turn over these documents. They obstructed, these are allegations, that there was obstruction of justice through his attorneys and himself. One count of withholding document or record, because there was something that was withheld. One count of corruptly concealing a document or a record. So here's an allegation of corruption, Santita. Corruption meaning that there is a political, these are all felonies, that somehow he corrupted the process. One count of concealing a document in a federal investigation. One count of scheme to conceal, so scheming, that's another. These are all intentional acts, felonies, that he schemed, somehow he manipulated, he dominated the process to conceal information. And one count of making false statements and representations. Well, I think that of all of these 30, and they total 37 felony counts, sometimes you might have, some felony counts, some that might be missing. These are 37 felony counts, and I would dare say that he could, at least 4 of these charges would carry a maximum penalty of 20 years in prison. But that's just 4 of them. 37, he would likely, the former president would likely put away for life. Now, whether he was convicted in Miami, that's completely different. But I can tell you, if this case is expedited, if the judge doesn't demonstrate her clear bias, then this case could be expedited, and we could see it go to trial before the election. I don't know that would happen, but it could happen.
Well, Reverend Dr. Urey, your thoughts about this?
Well, good morning, Santita. Good morning to my colleagues. I think Madam Chair is right. The government's objective is speedy trial. The former president's objective is to delay as long as possible to get as close to January 2025 as he possibly can. I think this is really a setup to who gets to the finish line first and according to their own schedule. The charges are indeed serious, and the reason the charges are what they are is because, to Madam Chair's point, there had been a number of conversations back and forth about how to turn over these documents, and in the course of the communication, there was a failure to do so. And that the actions of the former president, and obviously they have documented conversations, and they also have one who might be considered a co-conspirator. You got to remember that basically the aide that helped in the moving of these documents is going to be the one they're going to lean on. Do not be surprised that in the course of trying to prosecute the former president, you may get a deal for the other party that may even go as far as immunity, depending on how bad the government wants his testimony, to be able to force the conversation around what the president's actions and words may or may not have been. And so I think when we look at this, I still don't think, when I look at the penalties for these different acts, I'm less impressed with the notion that they're going to try to imprison a former president. That would be, I think, for many politically beyond the pale, but it would also be so disruptive to the day-to-day fabric for folks who are following the president to be extremely dangerous. This has always been about really how do you neutralize this movement that has come up, this insurgency politically. And if he is able to be disqualified because he actually had in his possession documents that belong to the government, there are, I wouldn't even be surprised if there are not other charges added. There may be a superseding indictment that comes at some point. That's really what this is all about. And I think what you're looking at is you have political interests really driving what this is. You've got the Trump base. You also have kind of the classic Republican base that has been trying to figure out how do we wrest back some of this political influence. Then you have the Democratic Party, who has their interests as well. So now you have this three-way, or maybe more-way, tug of war, trying to figure out how do we control the political narrative and the political dynamic. And so I think this is less about lock him up, even though you'll hear that as kind of a chant and a mantra. This is really about shut him down because he is so disruptive to the political norm that it becomes a threat to the business-as-usual politics that we've seen over the last several decades. That's really what's at stake. The indictment's impressive. It's going to be sensational. The trial, can we get cameras? Probably not. But everybody's going to want to see it, so we'll rely on Madam Chair to be able to give us commentary when she does what she does so well. So I'm going to have my popcorn. I'm going to have my Coke and Coke Zero. Because I got to cut down on the sugar, and we got to see what happens.
Dwight McKee, the headline from Vice is that we need supporters to start killing. This is what's on the message boards. I mean, people, and now former President Trump has asked his supporters to meet him in Miami. The Oath Keepers have said that they will be in Miami. And everyone's expecting a January 6th moment. I'm wondering, will it play? Will we see January 6th again, or will it be a little different?
I hope Yuri has his passport and his motorcycle while he's getting his popcorn. Because they are playing with fire. They are playing with fire. He's right about Yuri. He's absolutely right about it's not set up to put him in jail. It's set up to neutralize his run, his campaign. But that's as much of a problem as if he is convicted. He will not go to jail. I've already said that. Whoever is Republican nominee or Republican candidate, they have to take a vow to pardon him just to be on the ticket. Whoever the Democrat is, they have to pardon him to save the nation. But where the problem is going to be is the perception is that the Democrats are using the Justice Department to take him out of the race, to take the option from the Republican mega crowd for him to be the candidate. And they see this as selective prosecution, and it is, since there's evidence that Hillary and Biden and Pence have done the same thing without the consequences. They see that as unfair. They think that between this and the impeachments, there's a preponderance of targeting him more than they have any other single candidate that has run. The impeachment didn't win. And his crowd, who was already a paranoid, conspiratorial crowd, see this as a scheme of the deep state to take him out of the race.
Well,
yes, there's going to be a battle.
Well, my question is, are they paranoid and conspiratorial? I mean, if I shut my eyes, I almost hear the left and the civil rights crowd. I mean, before people knew who J. Edgar Hoover was, we knew who he was. You know, when he was the most popular lawman in America, we knew how dirty he was. And then you got a chance to see by watching how dirty he was, just how corrupt the system was. I mean, my question is...
I didn't say they were wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you paranoid don't mean somebody ain't after you, old people used to say.
I did say that.
So they're the same crowd that looked at the virus and saw conspiracy. So they have no faith in government at all.
So what does that mean?
Particularly the FBI.
So when you have a group of Americans who have no faith in government, what does that mean?
It means that when they declare war, they start with the government. It was no accident that when he opened up his campaign in Waco, because there's a sense that the FBI bombed those children in Waco as a government conspiracy. And so there's no accident that when Timothy McVeigh blew up the Oklahoma building, he blew it up on the anniversary of Waco, is that these people, their bearing is that that the government has declared war against them, and he most epitomized that, and that when they're fighting to save the country, they're fighting to save democracy. They're fighting because their rights are being violated, which is why they have such a run on guns. The runs on guns is not to shoot children. That's a byproduct. The run on guns is not to shoot black people. That's a byproduct. These people believe that the Second Amendment give them the rights to bear arms, so they become a militia if the government gets out of hand. And so that's why I say with fire, huh?
No. Let me bring on Robert from Bridgeport, because we're looking at the political consequences. Attorney C.K. Hoffler and Reverend Dr. Todd Geary, Esquire, and, of course, preeminent social scientist Dwight McKee. We're looking at, you have to look at all of these things together. You can't look at them in isolation, but I wanted to bring on Robert, who's called in from Bridgeport, who has a question for you, Attorney Hoffler. Robert, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Santita, everybody.
Good morning.
I only have one question. Mm-hmm. How is it possible that Donald Trump can get a bond with those type of charges, with espionage included, considering that's like a national security risk?
Well, that's a great question. But just like anything else, everything, a judge makes a determination and of whether or not the defendant will qualify. And under these circumstances, even though these are very, very significant charges, everybody, depending upon the gravity of the crime, can, theoretically could be eligible for a bond. And he was, because I believe I think on some level, we could not expect that he would be held in custody because these are just allegations against him. And, it's not going to be, you can't look at this as a fair process. You can't look at this as comparing this indictment to other indictments, because he is a former president of the United States, number one. Number two, for those that 60% of Americans believe it's politically motivated, and perhaps 60% of Americans believe it's politically motivated, and it could be politically motivated, including how a judge addresses the question of a bond. And then thirdly, he's going to be entitled to defend himself and to launch a defense. So I think, unlike street crime, where if somebody shot and killed someone, although if it had been Donald Trump, I imagine he would be out on his own recognizance, as he predicted. But if someone shot and killed someone, then it might be different. But for this type of very significant, white-collar, albeit very significant, crime, a lot of times the defendants are out, we are able to post bond.
Okay, this is the point, though. This man is being charged with espionage. I'm talking about national security risk, which supersedes any street crime.
Let me ask you this, Robert. Do you know well, hold on, though, because I want to make sure that Robert understands the history of being charged under the Espionage Act. Because number one, I want to know if he's been charged with that, and charged under the Espionage Act, because that has always been applied politically. It's never been applied evenly, and it's always been applied against people who are on the left. Maybe there might have been one or two exceptions in our history, Robert. Just to be clear on that, I'm not saying that.
Well, maybe I'm trying to compare it with like the Rosenbergs or other spies. So is that not the same as being a spy, espionage?
Well, the Espionage Act has been applied very, very differently. It has been applied to apply political pressure to people on the left to make them fold.
Right, yeah.
Let's look at Jonathan Pollard. Look at Jonathan Pollard, who's the most dangerous spy in the history of the Republic. He was let out of the country and he's free. It lets you know just how political all of this stuff is, right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And then Robert, Robert, the purpose of a bond is to Prime, and how you doing? The purpose of a bond is so that the defendant won't flee. A bond is really kind of locks you into your options of trying to leave the country or trying to leave your locality. And so, they take your passport or they put you on bond just so you won't flee. A guy like Donald Trump, there's no threat of that for him because he's recognized all over the world. There's no place he can flee. And if he tried to escape the country, chances are he'd be on his own airplane with his name on it. So there'll probably be not a lot of doubts with it.
It's me, I'm coming.
but it's even more fundamental than that. Remember, there's no place that Donald Trump can go that the American government does not know because he has Secret Service protection. He's a ward of the government.
And they will not travel out the country with him. Let me just say, they made up Jackson rules when Reverend ran for president, so that probably won't apply for him, because in '84 Reverend left the United States. So what they did was if Reverend wanted to leave the United States in the '88 cycle, the Secret Service were prohibited from moving with him, right, from giving him protection. And so I'm sorry, I wanted to give you that piece. That's an
important piece, right? So the government will know where he is. There are two conditions for bond. One, to Big Brother Dwight's point, is there a likelihood that the accused will not show up for court? That's really the biggest issue.
What do you think?
The second is, under the nature of the trial, he's going to show up because he wants to be in court. He wants this to be a very public trial. He wants this to be...
Can you hold this thought?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm going to go on over my break, but Robert, stay there, and everybody else call us at 773-763-9278, because I want to know from you, CK, did they let him keep his passport? If anything's possible, I'm not saying probable, but at least possible. Call me at 773-763-9278, back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. If you want to have these conversations in person, and I know you do, better come on to this Rainbow Push International Conference, because we will be there in between sessions. You know this, CK. You know this, Todd. You know this, Dwight. We end up talking up a storm, then we go out and get something to eat. We want to continue with the conversation or bring something in. I'm telling you, it's going to be great. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Dwight Linear Bob says to you, he agrees with you. This could be another insurrection, a rebellion against what the MAGA people believe is an oppressive state. And see, if they're looking at this as an oppressive state, you're 2 degrees away from them linking up with people on the far left. Dwight, Todd, CK. This could get out of control, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. Anybody have a response?
Well, I think it depends on what we mean by out of control. I thought about this since a prior conversation. What we basically saw on January 6th was a police response. It is kind of quasi-military. It's not military.
Mm-hmm.
A true insurrection would require a military response, which, if you remember, the Department of Defense was very intentional about not activating the D.C. National Guard, which is basically the Department of Defense purview. If it gets to that point, keep an eye on what the military does, not so much what police departments and law enforcement agencies do. That will give you a sense of how far out of control this may actually be.
But you know what, Todd, I get the sense that we're watching an internal fight with the intelligence and military communities. It seems like some of them are on Trump's side, others are not. You know, because you look at many of the people who were leading the January 6th riot, many of them were military and FBI.
Yeah, but those you always have kind of these sects, these little subgroups, right? Mm-hmm. But when we consider what has happened with this indictment, when you look at the detail behind what was in some of the information that was recovered from Mar-a-Lago, mm-hmm. I think you begin to now create more of a coalition between intelligence and military, because some of the information that was in those boxes were so specific to very sensitive interactions with foreign governments that I think it forced a coalescence that I don't think Trump was anticipating would occur. And so I think now you're going to see a different kind of response because of what secrets were in the boxes that they're not going to publicly disclose. But certainly everybody knows this talking indictment was necessary, because what they're really trying to avoid is a motion for a bill of particulars. Be very specific about what you're charging, when you say it happened, who you say did it, what were the circumstances. They don't want that, and so they're trying to get ahead of that. But as we get to the substance of what was in those boxes, what were actually in those documents, mm-hmm. not just that there was a stamp on them that said classified, secret, top secret, whatever the classification markings may have been, it's what's on the paper. And what they have indicated is that some of what was in those boxes were so sensitive with some of the most aggressive political interactions with foreign adversaries, that's where I think the spy community, the intelligence community, and the military community are going to be more aligned than they are going to be in opposition.
Anyone have anyone have a response to that? Hello? Okay. Dwight, you still there? CK, anybody?
Yeah, I'm still here, and I pretty much agree with him, except on a couple of points. One is that we still don't understand the international implications of this and the role that, if there is unrest in the United States, the role that Russia and China and Taiwan, and how they would exploit this internationally, and Saudi Arabia. And if they, in a real sense, side with Trump on this and create more international chaos on the goods and services, the transfer of goods and services, and the natural resources that America is dependent upon, it's going to cause even more chaos and even more tragedy. We have to remember that in Revolutionary War, there were countries that sided with the rebels. France sided with the rebels and against the British. Mm-hmm. Spain sided with the rebels against the British. Some of the Indians sided with the British against the Americans. I mean, it depends on what your international interests lie. And so there's probably some connectivity between those documents that he was holding and his relationship with these other countries. And we don't know how they're going to respond when the chaos starts. And we don't know how many of their agents that are based here are going to be involved in the chaos, and they are militarily trained. We forget Lee Harvey Oswald was trained by the CIA and was a double spy, both for Russians and for the CIA. And he's the one that did the shooting. So some of these insurrectionists may already be agents of these foreign governments.
Here's what I think is a bigger challenge, though, Dwight, on that point, is not so much how other countries observe. It really becomes, remember this notion of kind of parroting and imitating what folks were seeing in the United States. You started to see this kind of nationalistic attitude begin to sweep through other countries. What other countries are going to be watching, particularly the countries that you've named and others, are going to be looking to see, is there going to be almost like a sequence of uprisings where you see the insurgent, disaffected class begin to push back on these governments that are actually in collusion. The truth of the matter is, in Russia, don't want to see a disruption to the U.S. economy because they're too dependent upon
60 seconds, everyone.
Of the U.S. economy to make their stuff go. They're trying to figure out how do they make sure they get what they need without seeing a counterinsurgency out their own back window that makes this more of a global movement than it is an isolated incident in the United States.
Well, everyone here, we're about to come right back. I would love to get some of that on the air, if you don't mind. Oh, boy. Everybody call us at 773-763. WCPT 773-763-9278. Good morning, Carol Foskin out in Beverly Hills. And Susan Garner out in L.A.
10 seconds, everyone.
Whew. This is a whole lot. Okay.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It is Monday, June 12th, 2023. I am Santita Jackson, coming to you from the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, WCPT 820 here in Chicago, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends page on Facebook. Santita Jackson and Friends. Facebook reached out to me. They asked me to ask you to go over to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Let's talk about the Trump indictment. What is the political fallout? Number one, what has he been charged with? What will be the political fallout? Domestically and internationally, this is a huge story, everybody, and we're going to get right to it, everybody. Get right to it. July 15th through the 19th, we'll be talking about these issues and so many more. At the Rainbow Push International Conference, go to rainbowpush.org or call 773-FREEDOM today so that you can get involved. Let's get to some of these headlines. Former President Donald Trump will be arraigned tomorrow in Miami, where he will hear dozens of federal charges read against him. He faces a total of 37 felony counts related to his handling of classified documents after he left office. According to the indictment unsealed on Friday, 31 documents remain at the center of the case. 21 of them were marked top secret, 9 were marked secret, and 1 contained no marking. One 2020 document concerned the, quote, nuclear capabilities of a foreign country, close quote, the indictment said. Over the weekend, Trump returned to the campaign trail defiant and on the attack. This is a political hit job, he told Georgia Republicans. We will be talking about that with you and Attorney C.K. Hoffler and Reverend Dr. Todd Deary, Esquire, and Dwight McKee, Jeff Cohen from Netroots Action will be joining us at the bottom of the hour as he talks about this and talks about where we go from here. Is Biden the strongest candidate to face someone whose support is being galvanized by these charges, everybody? A section of Interstate 95 in Philadelphia collapsed yesterday due to a tanker truck fire, according to the East Coast primary highway, with major damage that could take months to repair. No injuries or fatalities from the I-95 collapse have been reported, but it remains unclear whether anyone was caught in the burning commercial tanker truck, which was carrying a petroleum-based product. Be prayerful for them. Both northbound and southbound lanes in the area are not structurally sound to carry any traffic on the now collapsed road, on which roughly 160,000 vehicles commute on each day, according to the Pennsylvania governor. We've got to get our infrastructure together, everybody. We've got to get our infrastructure together. We're sending prayers and so much love and so much gratitude to the universe for the saving of the lives of 4 young children who'd been found alive after surviving a plane crash in which their mother was killed in the Amazon. One of them, as young as 1 year old, everybody. They survived, quote, like children of the jungle, according to the Colombian president, adding that they had demonstrated an example of total survival that will be remembered in history. The children were weak and needed food, but eating cassava flour and fruit helped save their lives. God bless these children, everybody. 67 degrees, partly cloudy in Chicago. Minneapolis, St. Paul, a high of 81 degrees. In the NBA, will the Nuggets close it out tonight? They have an opportunity. They lead in their series against the Heat 3-1. We'll find out at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. The Panthers will be facing off against the Golden Knights tomorrow night. Will the Golden Knights take it? They have an opportunity to close it out, but that's tomorrow night. In the WNBA, the Aces 93, the Sky 80, and the Lynx 91, 86 over the Sparks, everybody. The Blue Jays 7, the Twins 6, the Giants 13, and the Cubs 3, and those are just some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. I want you to call me at 773-763-9278 as we talk about this Trump indictment, and I want to get these comments from these callers, and then I want our panelists to weigh in. Let me go to Dynamo Dave. Dynamo Dave, what's on your mind, sweetie?
Oh, hey, how's the sunshine of Chicago doing today?
You are my son, my sweet. What's on your mind today?
Hey, a couple things. One, first of all, I learned so much from your esteemed panel that you assemble every day. But I was wondering, can they prosecute Trump on intent in terms of his intention behind clearing all those documents, which we think has to do with the profiteering? And then number two, one of your esteemed panel, I think last week, mentioned that the man on the street would say, like, Hillary and Joe Biden and Mike Pence, they've all done this same thing that Trump's been indicted for. But the difference being is they weren't the chief executive officer, or what do they call it, the president of the United States. They were lower positions.
No. Remember, Nancy Pelosi. Well, hold on. Let me just say this. Remember, Nancy Pelosi, as the Speaker of the House, is the co-equal head. We have a tricameral form of government. So the Chief Justice is the head of one branch, the Speaker of the House is the head of another, and the President is the head of another. And remember, she had to remind Donald Trump, I am your peer. Remember, she had to do that.
Right.
I loved it, by the way. So, well, Dwight, you raised that issue. Why don't you speak to what Dynamo Dave has been talking about? I mean, because in fact, that is one of the talking points.
At some level, in fact, that gives him an advantage, Dave, in his defense, because he can always say, as the president, he was the only one with capacity to declassify these documents. And in many of these documents, he had already declassified. The other, Hillary and Biden as the vice president could not say that they had the right to declassify documents. And so to that extent, it may work to his advantage.
Dynamo Dave? Oh, well, okay, everybody. So what do you think about that? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. James from Chicago. James, what's on your mind today?
Miss Santita, this is my first time calling, and I wanted to. The only thing that I wanted to say is that Donald Trump is nothing but the devil. He has got this country divided. He's talked about it all over the world. Nothing is really getting done because of Donald Trump. He doesn't care what you say about him. I guess the last thing that I would like to say is that nothing is going to get any better until Donald Trump passes away. That's when things is going to get better. All right, thank you for listening.
Well, I mean, do you think Trump? Well, hold on. Do you think Trump is the cause or he's the symptom?
Donald Trump is the devil. He does what the devil do. He causes confusion, and that's what the devil do.
Well, no,
he's got the whole United States confused.
Well, no, but my question is he the cause or is he a manifestation of what's already been here?
I think he's the cause of all these problems that we're having today. Okay. If there was no Donald Trump, I believe things would be better.
Better or right? You know, I'm splitting hairs here because I think that we should. Because I think that, I think we have to go beyond being better and get to being right. But but I'm hearing you. So anyone want to respond to that, Reverend Dr. Urey?
Well, I think that's the debate. That's the fundamental question that's at play. It's in the minds of the people who will be watching this play out. What role does Donald Trump play in the conditions of their lives? Some will feel like he's the fall guy. Others will feel like he's the cause, and that's how you have an ideological basis upon which to drive kind of an internal uprising. That's the whole point. The propaganda around the charges is probably going to be as important as the process itself. It's not what happens in the courtroom. And this is Big Brother Dwight's point. It's not what's happening in the courtroom. It's what's going to be happening outside the courtroom that ultimately is going to matter. And if you have these flare-ups of incidents that begin to kind of detract from the typical, day-to-day business of regular, everyday folks, all that's going to do is continue to swell. It could get to the point where it's necessary to almost shut down the process of the prosecution until they're able to get some control. And that's going to fit the narrative, because if Donald Trump wins the nomination, and let's say ultimately, and we've seen him do it before, wins the presidency, January 20th, 2025 at 12:01, the president takes the oath at 12 o'clock. At 12:01, his first official action will be to pardon himself of any and all charges and anybody else that they think they're coming after. That's going to happen.
And his second, if I can piggyback on what you said, Urey, and his second act is going to be to declare martial law and arrest everybody who put him in jail under the guise of national insurrection, and say that they tried to stab our democracy by keeping him from being elected. Martial law will be his second act.
Yep.
So where are we as a nation? Is the republic that fragile?
Not to quote Malcolm, but this could be an episode of the chickens coming home to roost. You've been maintaining power on a very tenuous principle of always squashing dissent. The Espionage Act was to squash dissent. The voices of the disconnected and the disaffected, often being either pilloried or ignored outright, has created this angst, and in this mode where you don't need actual corporate media to be able to tell your story. Everybody's got a camera and everybody's got an account. It makes it more difficult to control the message and the response. And so this is they don't have to thread the needle on this. How do they go forward with the prosecution, but also how do they maintain control over the dissidents who are beginning to meet and talk more publicly about their discontent, because they don't know what their response is going to be at the time when there are 400 million guns on the street, with more than one per every person. That's the kind of volatility that they're dealing with. And I'm not so sure that the I-95 collapsed. I'm trying to figure out where that tanker came from and how you have a collapse under the underbelly of an interstate that runs not only goods, but military equipment up and down the bases that flow in and out from I-95. Pay attention to what that was yesterday, because it's not as innocent as they're trying to make it appear.
Well, because those of us who've lived on the East Coast, and, I've lived there for a long time, I-95, that I-95 collapse in Philly, that's a huge deal, everybody. I mean, that's getting you into and out of New York and into D.C. That's a whole lot. By the time you leave D.C. to get to Philly, you're almost in New York. By the time you leave New York, you're almost in D.C. There's a lot, and you're almost in Boston. I mean, there's a whole lot. But those of us who live on the East Coast travel by train, and you travel by car.
Give you one word, Santita. Port. P-O-R-T.
How about that?
All right.
No, explain.
Well, the way you move goods is airways, seaways, highways. And the places where there are intersections of all three, there's a lot of movement of goods, services, and equipment that allows for the mobility of the economy. Philadelphia is uniquely one. Baltimore is a second one. I-70 runs through Baltimore, east-west. I-95 runs through Baltimore, and there's a port. And it's a deep water port. So when we start looking at where these incidents are occurring, they're not innocently. It wasn't just kind of, oh, look, it just happened to be in Philadelphia. I don't believe that. I'm still trying to figure out how you get a tanker truck in a place where you have an interstate, because that's the first thing you do if you're going to have an internal disruption, is you disrupt the ability to move supplies where supplies need to be, and that's disrupting airports, highways, and controlling the freeway.
I'm just trying to figure...
That's a move.
It is, and I'm trying to figure out how you fix your lips to tell me that a tanker broke the I-95. I'm sorry. There's just something about that. Hey, it's not adding up to me, so I want you all to call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Let's talk about this, everybody. Susan Garner says Trump will never see the Oval Office again in her view. So what say you? First, CK in about a minute.
Well, I'm not sure he'll go through the Oval Office again, but I think that because of this indictment and other indictments, I predict there's going to be an indictment in the District of Columbia. And if there's an indictment in the District of Columbia, that will, even though Miami is supposed to be the rocket docket, that case will progress through the system very quickly before the elections. That's my prediction. So if that case does progress through the system, no matter the outcome, I don't think he will see the Oval Office again, because I do think that on some level, this does challenge his viability as a president dealing with international issues, classified issues, sensitive issues going forward. But I do think that he will run a fairly explosive campaign, and this is mobilizing his base. We knew that it was going to. I said early on he was going to be indicted. And let's not forget Georgia. Let's not forget District Attorney Fonnie Willis, in which she is the case is moving through her system. So I tend to agree, but I do think that we're going to have an explosive campaign, and I do think that we are on the verge of what some could term a civil war in this country, unfortunately.
Let's say you, Reverend Dr. Yuri.
Well, there's a lot there, right? The concern about civil war is a real one. But the reason these federal trials are so important is that these are the only charges of those that have been presented in state courts or may be presented in state courts that have the potential effect of disqualifying the former president for running for office again. That's the big deal. He could be convicted in New York. He could be convicted in Georgia if those Georgia charges come about. State laws do not have federal impact on his ability to run as a candidate. So what they do with that's really kind of good fodder. It fuels the news cycle. These are this case that has come down from the Special Counsel is the only one that by statute, when you start looking at the potential charges that could be raised under the Espionage Act, one of the penalties, aside from jail time, is a permanent disqualification from holding federal office. That's a penalty. That's why these cases matter to this particular now candidate, not just former president, candidate for presidency of the United States. Because if they don't prosecute quickly and they don't get what they need quickly, if he gets back in office, the Espionage Act will be of no consequence and no effect to anything Donald Trump will try to do.
Dwight McKee, former Attorney General Eric Holder, says that he can run, he can win. If he's elected, he's going to be impeached and removed from office. Wow, that could be a bigger mess. What do you see?
Is that what Eric said?
That's what he said.
That's interesting. That's interesting. First thing is, and I think you made some brilliant points today, is that I went to 2 years ago when he was running against Biden 4 years ago, whenever that was. I made a statement back then. I said he will lose, but he won't leave. And so it's two options here. One is to lock him up and create what will probably be a civil war. The second option is to not lock him up. But if he don't lock him up, if he don't win, he still ain't going nowhere. And so he is only going to build his base, the mega base. He is only, as long as he lives, now he may not have but 5 or 10 more years to live, but as long as he lives, he's going to be a gadfly in the eye of this country. And his base, who is only becoming more and more broad and more impactful on everyday politics, going to expand. And so there's going to be a Donald Trump problem, boy, for the next decade.
Why do you see
guarantee you that whatever that.
Why do you see his base? I got a minute. Why do you see his base expanding? I have a minute.
Because the Hispanics, many of the Hispanics are buying the Trump. Many of the young black men or older black men, are becoming Trump fans. Many people, the independents who was twitching between, see this now as a conspiracy, and it's reinforcing whatever belief they had that the whole game is rigged. Donald Trump came down that elevator, and the first thing he said is, one of the things I want to explain to y'all is this whole game is rigged against you all. And only thing that's happening is all this is being reaffirmed. And then what you will hear with the next guest is Biden's dirt and Biden's family dirt, and why he's not the best candidate is my estimation. I don't know the guy, but I just deal with what I think and what I see. Nobody is dealing with the things that the Biden's relationship with the Ukraine and how suspect that is, and the fact that this may be a quid pro quo situation where they've given him and his family money, and in exchange he's giving them arms and the money to fight a war that they can't win. So this thing is really, really, really tiered and really, really layered. It's not as simple as Donald Trump put some documents in the corner and didn't tell nobody. I mean, it's really out, can get real out there.
Oh, it's here. CK, you're going to be on Court TV you're going to be analyzing this all week. I got 30 seconds.
I will be on Court TV this week, later in the week. But I'll be on Court TV on Thursday from 10 to 11, and then Friday from 1 to 3. But, Santita, this is just very quickly. I think this is one of the 21st century to a very, very low point. And I fear that we could be in the midst or in the pre-stages of a civil war, definitely intellectually, definitely morally, definitely philosophically, and possibly from a military standpoint.
Well, we're going to see, everybody. Here we are. Let's talk with Jeff Cohen about whether Biden is the strongest candidate to deal with this. I want you to call me at 773. You all can stick around and talk about it. I know CK's got to run, but, this is one of the top progressives of the past 50 years. Netroots Action. We're going to be talking about that. Indeed, they had a campaign. Don't run, Joe. Please. Let's get someone strong who can take this on. What do you think, everybody? Call me at 773-763-9278. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Oh, you all give me the flux, but here we are. Yo.
I'm online searching for a popcorn machine to rent for the convention.
He is a 14 karat. I don't know why we even paying attention to him.
Well, so I must run, but this has been great. This is we're going to be hearing about this from now until the election.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
We haven't seen anything yet. we haven't seen anything.
So Santita, here's what I would say to your current question, right? Is Biden strong enough to handle this?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a characteristic test. I think this comes down to, if this were to play out in its most extreme form, who is most likely to use the limits of the law and the military to squash an uprising? And that's why I'm thinking, because of the ideology of the current president,
mm-hmm.
the history of the current president in terms of his own legislative focus. Don't be surprised. Don't think he's so old not to know he's still the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. That's really
sending Jeff Cohen through.
Most likely. And it really comes down to, if there's an uprising and he's the president, he's going to have to be the one strong enough to do it, because he's the only one that can activate the military.
Well, he's very pro-police.
Full
I don't see him as a peacemonger. Not Biden. No. This is a guy who walked onto the U.S. Senate floor 2 weeks after they almost killed Rodney King and declared the police officers' Bill of Rights. That's who he is. I ain't mad. I'm just putting on who I'm dealing with. I just think we now, I think, we're at an inflection point, I think, as a nation. But I think we've got, I want you all to meet Jeff Cohen. Jeff Cohen? Mr. Cohen?
Yes, I'm with you.
Oh, boy, we've had quite the discussion this morning, and they wanted to hear what you had to say. Because, don't run, Joe. I want you to know that made me holler.
60 seconds every, never mind.
Yeah.
That's the first time I've heard never mind. Here's your time. I'll forget it.
No, stay. No, I want you, because you got to know this man. I've known him for a long time. And this has been one of Reverend's supporters. Oh, we love Jeff Cohen.
All right. Now 60 seconds, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Right. Don't run, Joe. That was the campaign. Now, you all changed the name, didn't you?
Yeah, if people are interested, it's now called stepasidejoe.org. And, our slogans are, Joe Biden should step aside, open the primary process, and defeat the GOP. We are concerned that the Republican Party is ever more extreme and that Joe Biden is not up to the task of campaigning and winning in November 2024. That would be a disaster for progressive values, for people of color, for working class people. So we just don't think Joe Biden is up to the task.
Hold
we
that
want to
thought.
open up the process.
Hold that thought,
Yes.
because I want to bring you on the radio, but we're on StreamYard right now, so a lot of people are hearing you, and they are like,
10
like,
seconds.
talk more, Jeff Cohen, talk more. So just hold on. 'cause
Sounds good.
Dwight McKee is about to pass out here. Just, Dwight, go on mute so you don't laugh loudly all over.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, June 12th, Monday, 2023. These are very serious times. People are gathering in Miami as we speak. Indeed, they're militarizing Miami to deal with the onslaught of Trump supporters who have been asked by the former president to come to Miami, and they plan to express their support. Will they do it peacefully? Will they just be there? Will their presence be menacing? We don't know. We don't know. I don't think we can't get into a place where we begin to push aside people who protest or who express their opinions, because that can go in either direction. Let's not do that. All I ask coming out of the civil rights movement is that the protest or that your expression be peaceful. Got to talk about that. I just know from my experience in the civil rights movement, every time our expressions, peaceful expressions, got violent, they were provoked by government agents. The only march that Dr. King had, that he led, that became violent, was in Memphis. And it turns out the black guy who incited the violence was a Morehouse man who had ties to the CIA. That's the reality. He was on Amy Goodman's show and couldn't answer the question. So let us establish that. But we have got one of the leading progressives of the past 50 years, someone who is really a hero of mine. He's been working with Norman Solomon for so many years, but I remember meeting him during Reverend Jackson's campaigns. But he's always been on the right side of history. And so I'm just so excited to have the co-founder of RootsAction.org, Jeff Cohen, with us once again. They've had a very interesting campaign. Don't run, Joe. It's not that they don't like Joe Biden. These are very serious times, and you need someone real strong to deal with a candidate like Donald Trump, who's gathering a lot of strength, everybody. A lot of strength from day to day to day. Dwight McKee, I know Reverend Dr. Todd Urey, I know you wanted to hear Jeff Cohen as he comes to the show. And so talk to us today, because we are looking at a very serious situation, not just in Miami. Some people are saying that we need to start killing. That's on message boards supporting former President Trump. And it's not just far-right supporters. That's what the corporate media are telling you. Most Americans feel that this is a politically motivated indictment, which to me is dangerous, because that means it's not viewed as something pure. So talk to me. What do you think about this indictment? And do you think Joe Biden is the strongest possible candidate to put up against Donald Trump should he become the nominee? Jeff Cohen? Ooh. Is Mr. Cohen there?
It says he's still here.
Okay, he might be on mute. Well, you know, as we get Mr. Cohen back up, you just make sure, just find out where he is. What do you think, Dwight McKee? Is he the strongest candidate?
No, he's not. Well, he's the most highly visible candidate, and he has the momentum of a Democratic candidate, and they've neutralized all his opposition. So to that extent, he's the strongest candidate that the Democrats will have coming out of their convention. He would not be the strongest candidate if they were to get behind somebody else and give them the same push that they've given him. There are other candidates that are more appealing, more charismatic, younger, more intellectual, that would have a real shot against Trump if they would. But the apparatus of the Democratic machine is already behind Biden. And so it's so hard to get through that for the Bernies and the Warrens, to get through that you never get a chance to see who the stronger candidates could be. And since they're not debating, you won't be able to see it through there either. But my thoughts is that once they get all of these accusations on Trump public, he's going to be even more weak than he is.
Well,
Once it's demonstrated that he's taking these bribes, and his family's a little shaky, and his son is a drug addict. I mean, it's going to get a little more shaky.
Well, let me ask you, do we have Jeff Cohen back? Okay, well then, why don't we do this? Let's call him again, Devin. Let's just call him so we can get
I'm
him.
doing that right now, Santita.
Okay, thank you so
Having issues.
much. Reverend Dr. Uri, are you still there?
I'm still here.
So, do you think that Joe Biden is the strongest candidate to deal with someone who is, I will say this, those people who support Trump will go to the wall for him. That's formidable.
Yeah. So here's the dilemma that the Democrats have. The incumbent president has a record, right? What do you put up as the list of accomplishments? That's always been the conversation. The issue of messaging has been a thing. You come out of COVID, you've got American Rescue Plan, you've got infrastructure, you've got, these flows of dollars through the states, you've got the appointments to the federal bench. That's a big deal. And so someone to come along and run as an aspirant for the office has to run on an idea or an ideology.
Sending Jeff Cohen through?
That's exactly where Trump wants you, is to try to have a battle of wits around the possibility, because everybody gets to talk out of their imagination. Mm-hmm. That's going to be extremely problematic for any Democratic candidate that's not been seriously vetted with a record that's going to be able to help run with this. And I'll just add this real quick because I thought about it. Florida's going to be tricky tomorrow because, remember, DeSantis just signed in April the law that says you don't need a permit to carry a concealed weapon in Florida. Pay attention to what happens in Florida tomorrow. That's going to give you a sense to your question. Who's going to be strong enough to deal with this Trump factor, because it's going to play out before your very eyes.
Wow, live and in living color. We have Jeff Cohen back. Jeff Cohen, I'm so glad that you're here. Well, we've been, I asked, the panel the question, of course, this segment is for you. Do you believe that Biden is the strongest candidate to face a candidate who, whatever people feel about Trump, his supporters support him and they will go down supporting him? And you, of course, you all came together, Netroots Action came up with a campaign. Don't run, Joe, just for the sake of the country. Roots Action said, look. And it's not, don't run, Joe. Now it's step aside, Joe. Talk to me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with your assessment that these are dangerous times. You and I go back a ways. Your dad goes back even further. I've never seen anything like this. The power that Donald Trump has, he's got 75 million people enthralled, and he's a charlatan. And he said it best himself, that he could go on Fifth Avenue and kill and shoot someone, and he'd still have all these fans. He can take government documents, lie to the FBI, ask his top aide to hide the documents, and there's still, no one's reading, all of his fans will not read the indictment. And Trump's former attorney general has read the indictment. He went on Fox News. He was loyal to Donald Trump up until the very end. I'm talking about Attorney General Barr. Mm-hmm. And Barr went on Fox News yesterday, and he says, if even half of the indictment is true, it's it's a detailed indictment. It's very, very damning. If even half of it is true, then Trump is toast. So that's the reality. I watch Fox News, and, the Republicans always claim they were the party of law and order, which was often a racist code word. But now they're talking about defunding the FBI. And it wasn't the FBI that lied to Trump. It was Trump that lied to the FBI and instructed his top aide to lie to the FBI. If you, Santita, or I, or your panelists got caught lying to the FBI, we'd be indicted. And Trump has been indicted. So we understand the dangers of the extremism of the Republican Party. They deny election results. They deny that we're having global warming and the climate crisis. They deny the gun emergency. They deny everything. They deny the right to abortion. They deny the existence of racism. And if you talk about racism, then you will be suppressed in places like Florida, where the governor, who was basically groomed by Donald Trump, is going after schools and universities that teach racism. So we understand the danger. It is dangerous time. On the other hand, we have a Democratic Party leadership that seems blind to what's going on. You just saw President Biden making a deal, succumbing to blackmail, succumbing to hostage-taking, and negotiating a deal in order to pay off the country's debts. That hadn't happened before. In the past, if the Republican Party said, we're demanding, we're taking hostage, you've got to negotiate with us and sacrifice the poor and put more onus on the poor and make the poor jump over even more hurdles to get some federal aid, the Democrats says, no, we're raising the debt ceiling. We're paying the debts. It's in the 14th Amendment because of the Civil War that the U.S. would always honor its debts. And many, many progressives in the Democratic Party, and many who aren't progressive, told Biden, whatever you do, don't start negotiating on the backs of the poor. And he did. And, so we've got a problem where you've got leaders of the Democratic Party that are not strong, they're not bold, they're not inspiring. President Biden does not inspire. He's turned off young people who care about climate because now he's drilling in the Arctic, now he's drilling for oil in the Gulf, now he's exporting even more liquefied natural gas. So all these young people that think their future is clouded, and they are right because of global warming and the climate crisis, he's turning them off. So we need a Democratic candidate who can inspire poor people to vote, who can inspire young people to spend months of their lives being active to defeat the fascist threat that is represented by today's Republican Party. We just don't believe Biden is that person. We want to open up the primary process within the Democratic Party. People say, oh, that'll be divisive. Well, 4 years ago, we had an open process. It was so open that there were more than 20 candidates. They had to have the debates on 2 different nights. And after that open process, there was enough of a debate, and the Bernie people felt included, and Bernie and Biden made a process, a primary, a platform together, and progressives felt included, and they were out there in Georgia. We had, from Roots Action, we deployed resources to Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona, and we won all 3 states against Trump, for Biden. So we want to open up the process and then unify the Democratic Party over whoever the candidate is. It might be Governor Newsom. It might be other governors. Who knows? It might be Cory Booker. It might
could be Robert Kennedy. He's someone who gets
I don't even care.
From left and right. I mean, we don't know because they've not opened up the process. I feel like I'm going back, 40 years. Reverend was a divisive figure.
Yes.
Someone who had registered, who still registered more people to vote than any human being in the history of the Republic. I mean, how is it? What is that?
And he unified to defeat the threat of the right wing, which is an even greater threat. But you can't have unity against the right wing threat if you have some of your most hardcore progressive activists and all these young activists that are disillusioned with Joe Biden. And that's the situation we're in. That's why rootsaction.org. People can go to our website, or the new website is stepasidejoe.org. We still believe there's time for Joe Biden in the next month or 2 or 3 to say, look, I've heard the criticism, and I am going to step aside. With your help, I defeated Donald Trump in November 2020, and we need some new leadership to defeat whoever the Republican is in November 2024. The GOP threat is real. I don't want people to think that because we've got stepasidejoe.org that we minimize. It's because we see the right-wing threat so clearly that we believe the process needs to be opened.
Now, what do you say to people who say that he's had this progressive record, although he's always been on the right side? That is, he's been a right-leaning Democrat. He's always been over there. But once he came into governance, he has pushed some progressive policies. He's, been pushed back on some others, but he has pushed some progressive policies. And some people have said, let it be, let it be, let it be. Let's support him no matter what. And yet he is still polling so poorly. I don't understand there's a disconnect here. Because he really is. Why do you think he's polling so poorly? Let me start there.
I think, I study these polls. A lot of it is just because people think he's old and weak. Democrats think that. There was one poll from the New York Times where they found that, this is sort of stunning, 93% of Democrats under the age of 30 wanted a different Democratic candidate than Joe Biden. 93% of Democrats under the age of 30. So I think a big factor is he's seen as weak. He's seen as someone who can't fight the right, who can't stand up to Republicans. I think that these numbers are going to go up because he was seen as why did he even begin negotiations? The president is instructed by the 14th Amendment, everyone in government, you must honor your debt. So I think that's a big feeling. Among progressives, yes, we know Joe Biden's history. Every time the Democratic Party in Congress has been divided, Biden has been on the wrong side. I remember when your dad was trying to stop NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, because of how it would just exit jobs to cheap labor and slave labor countries out of the Midwest. And Joe Biden supported NAFTA. The progressives and more than half of Democrats in Congress opposed NAFTA. Joe Biden championed the crime bill, which ended up being, as everyone predicted on the left, a mass incarceration bill. Half or more Democrats in Congress opposed this absurd and dangerous invasion of Iraq that has destabilized the Middle East. Joe Biden championed that. Many Democrats in Congress were against the deregulation of Wall Street in 1999 and 2000 that was presided over by President Bill Clinton and Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich that led to the financial crisis of 2007 and 8 years later that caused so many people to lose their homes. Disproportionately, black families lost their homes. So Biden, throughout his Senate career, was always on the wrong side when the Democratic Party was divided. Has he been a little better than people expected, given his Senate record? Yes. Bernie Sanders has, and Bernie, of course, was one of the few white politicians when he was mayor of Burlington, Vermont, that endorsed Reverend Jesse Jackson for president.
He was one of only 2 in the United States. Two.
That's right.
And remember he got punched in the face? Remember that?
Oh God, yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. But Bernie has had some influence over Biden, but I think in the last few months, Bernie has been pushed aside, as everyone knows. Bernie did not want Biden to start negotiating with the hostage takers, to sacrifice the poor, to be able to pay the government's debts, which the president already has the power to do. And of course, Bernie is incensed, as are all of the younger Democrats, much younger than Bernie, that Biden keeps backtracking on global warming and climate crisis with the new drilling in the Arctic. I mean, Don't Run Joe, we had an ad. It was played. Millions of people, I think, have seen it. We've got Joe Biden, when he was campaigning for president in 2020, asked by a young voter in New Hampshire, what do you think about drilling in the Arctic, drilling in the federal lands, in the protected federal lands? The oil companies want to drill for oil. What's your position? And Joe Biden says, I'm against it. We should never drill in the Arctic. I've flown over the Arctic. We will never drill in the Arctic. If I'm the president, never. Period, 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 said Joe Biden. And now he's drilling in the Arctic. I don't know who the hell he thinks, he's going to, that's not going to win him a single vote, but I know it's lost him 1,000 activists who would have gone into Georgia, gone into these swing states like Michigan and Wisconsin to campaign for him, Arizona. He needs to win those states. And those states are always 50-50. And he's we had young people, largely Bernie people, that were spending months, and it was during COVID, spending months campaigning for Biden to defeat Trump in November of 2020 and the lead up to November. But those activists have been turned off by Joe Biden's weakness, especially in the last 6 months. So this idea that Bernie and progressives are getting a lot out of Biden, that's stopped. Everyone has to realize that's over. He's talking more to Kevin McCarthy, it seems, than he's talking to Bernie Sanders or Cory Booker. So I think people need to wake up. We need to open up the process. I love what you said. I'm scared about what's going to happen tomorrow. Did you hear what Carrie Lake said?
What did she say?
Carrie Lake, I watch a lot of Fox News, and I watch TV even to the right of Fox News. I watch Steve Bannon's program.
Well, no, hold on one moment. I got 1 minute left. Very quickly, what did she say?
Okay,
and why do you watch
fast.
people to the right? Just very quickly, no final minute.
You have to, because you have to understand what these people are scheming and what they're planning to do. Carrie Lake may be Trump's vice presidential running mate. She was the unsuccessful Republican candidate in Arizona, and she said over the weekend that if the prosecutors, quote, want to get to President Trump, they're going to have to go through me and 75 million Americans just like me, and most of us are card-carrying members of the NRA. She's saying most of us, of the 75 million that voted for Trump, we own guns. And we are upset. I mean, they're talking about a fascist-type insurrection on the right wing, and we need to be strong, nonviolent, of course, but strong on the progressives to defeat these people because they are enthusiastic, and a lot of the Democrats, unfortunately, are not enthusiastic about Joe Biden, and I understand lately their lack of enthusiasm.
And you're not saying that you don't like Joe Biden. What you're saying is we need someone. So this is not about who you don't like. It's about what we do need, right?
Yes, it's definitely what is required by this historic moment, and it's someone stronger and bolder than Joe Biden.
Can you stay with me for a minute? I just wanted you to be able to say goodbye to my audience.
I just love what you've done all of these decades, Santita. I know you were a supporter of FAIR. I founded the Media Watch Group Fair, and you should have Janine Jackson on the show. Have you had her lately?
I spoke with Janine and Jim Narekas yesterday, and let me tell you something. I showed up at their office when I lived in New York 30 years ago, and they were wondering, what is this black woman doing here in the middle of a Friday night? I was on my way to dinner. But I said, I've got to give you a check, I've got to give you support, and I've got to pick up your magazines. Stay right here on the Santita Jackson Show, everybody. Love you. I'm telling you, I showed up at the office and everybody turned around because I guess they were like, not just that I was black, that wasn't it. The thing is, there's someone who's coming into the office at 7. We were going down to dinner in the Village. And so I said, wait, you all, here's the office, here it is. I've got to run up here. I've got to give them some money, my little paltry dollars, my little coins. And I wanted to get Fair Media Watch. But I wanted back copies, right? And so I walked in there and they were like, you want what? I said, well, I want to be supportive, and I want to get some old issues. They were like, well, you can just take the old issues, but wow, really? I said, yeah, I think we'll do that.
You know, there was only one person more renowned than you who came in also after dinner time, looking for me at the fair office, walking in. I need media critics that will defend me. I'm being maligned in the California media, and it was farm worker leader Cesar Chavez.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yes, there were only 2 of us left in the office. You know, we saw him walking in. The office was big at that time, and I remember sort of, you know, scratching my eyes, saying, "Is Cesar Chavez in the fair office?" And sure enough, we spent an hour with him, and then we did go to his support. We supported your dad when he was being viciously maligned by the media.
Oh my
so
gosh.
That's what we did it there. At any rate, it's been great talking to you.
Absolutely.
But you need to have Janine talk about media bias in general. She's so great on the air.
I will. I'm just going to have her talk about this generally, but I think I want you to come back and talk about this because I felt that. Dwight, are you still there, Reverend Dr. Yeary?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, you want to say anything to
I'm
Mr.
here.
Cohen? This is one of my heroes in the progressive movement. In 1983 and in 1987, as we were launching the 84 and 88 campaigns, Reverend had a rainbow of support, but there were a group of white progressives, there were a group of Arab Americans, Jewish Americans, people from all over who absolutely supported Reverend. And we would get to places and see you all there and be like, well, we're glad to see you, but we had no idea that you actually liked us. And
your dad did so well in Iowa, which is not exactly a diverse state.
No, but you also gave us the analysis. It was always a relief.
Yeah.
Dwight and Todd, Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary Esquire, and Dwight is a noted social scientist here and a founding member of the Operation Push Board. He and Allie Walker were the youngest members. Then he works for the National Action Network and a lot of other great organizations now. What we found was that, you know, we did have a core of support out here, and what we could find with fairness and accuracy in reporting, with the work that they did, they reported very accurately, and the bias that Reverend had to face, and so we could pull from their work. You know, look, this is what you all are doing, because we would present your work to who we call the alligators, our press. Dad would say, I don't like the allegations, and he said, I don't like the alligators, so they carried these snapping alligators. You know, you love these people to pieces. And we would, we pivoted off of your work oftentimes because you did such great work on the bias in the media. But Dwight, do you want to say something to Mr. Cohen before he has to go? We're taking him away from his daughter this morning. We got to get him back.
Yeah, first I appreciate, their initiative to Biden out the race. I just think Biden, at the one level, has the same problem that Trump has, and that is he has to be the president. I think that he believes that if he's not the president anymore, it makes him vulnerable for indictment. And so just like Trump is there trying to be the president to keep him going to jail, I think Biden has the same issue, that if he's not the president and they start dealing with some of these issues, these suspect issues that his family has been involved in, it leaves him vulnerable as a private citizen to be also indicted. So I think he's holding on like Trump is holding on.
I'm afraid you are right. That's important analysis. I don't say that on the air when I'm being interviewed, but I watched the hearings.
We're on Facebook.
You know, his family has gotten so rich. Yeah.
Yeah, we're on Facebook. We're on Facebook, though. I just want you to know.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, his family. I watched the latest. They had like an hour and a half news conference. The Republicans on the committee investigating, and. Hunter Biden had his drug problems, he had his marital problems, and he was very unsteady, and he's going to all these foreign countries and getting millions and millions of dollars just because his name was Biden. And so the issue is, did Joe Biden know? I mean, if my kid was getting rich and had no actual talent, I'd say, Cassidy, how did you get all this money? And so it could hurt Joe Biden, and I agree with this analysis that he may be afraid of stepping down, but also it's been his lifelong dream. Remember how many times he's run for president, and he finally got in there. But it's a sad situation because you can't defeat something with nothing. You can't defeat enthusiasm with people that are sort of just afraid of the right wing, but they don't really believe that they're going to get anything out of it. I feel we may repeat 2016 and 2016.
And one may ask, Brother Cohen, one may ask how did he... And one may ask how he got that estate on a senator's and a teacher's salary. Senators only make $160,000, $70,000 a year, and teachers only make $100,000 a year. How do you get a $4 or $5 million estate on that salary? So something is happening that's funny.
Yeah, it's funny. It's sad. And, his brother is also, Joe Biden's brother has gotten very, very wealthy off of the Biden name. And I was surprised that at this news conference, and I was glued to it because, CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, they ignore this story to their peril. But those 75 million Trump voters hear this stuff all the time. They don't read the indictment against Trump, which is really damning, as Bill Barr said. But they do pay attention to all these right-wing media sources that are talking about Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, James Biden, and it's over and over and over. So I just feel, their voters are going to be more enthusiastic, and, poor people, black people are going to catch hell if Trump returns or if DeSantis wins. It's going to be a nightmare for all of us, for my daughters, in January 2025, if it's Trump or DeSantis, I live in Florida in the winter for about 2 or 3 months. I've seen this guy up close. I've never seen such naked racism since George Wallace. It's just naked. He's coming after people that talk about black history. When DeSantis was a high school teacher, after he left one Ivy League school and before he went to the other Ivy League school for law, he was a high school teacher in Atlanta. And some of those students remember what a bizarre take he had on the Civil War. It's more complex. It's not really about slavery entirely. He was weird. And his assault on black history, now going to the universities. First he was going after elementary, junior high, and high school. Now he's going after the university system in Florida, which is darn good. And he's out to terrorize professors, and they've now eliminated a DEI can't be taught, can't be used in a university. Every university has diversity, equity, inclusion to try to make what used to be all white and, generally upper middle class campuses to be more diverse. That's now illegal in the state of Florida. And that's what DeSantis wants to bring to the nation. So, if Trump comes back, he's vowing retribution. And if DeSantis gets in, well, he knows how to govern. He knows how to make changes with policy. He's not as erratic and crazy as Trump. So I see the November 2024 election as very, very dangerous. And I feel that, we had a lot of enthusiasm, even though the candidate was Biden and many, many wanted Bernie or they wanted Warren or they wanted Cory Booker or whoever. Everyone united behind Biden because they had to stop Trump. Trump was the status quo. Trump was the erratic guy occupying the White House, and we had to get him out. I fear that there won't be as much enthusiasm. And even if there's a tiny bit less enthusiasm for Democrats in November 2024, we lose.
Well, and I quite honestly, I'm fearful for poor whites. Look at all of the drugs they dropped on poor whites, the fentanyl. Are you serious? Who does that?
Yes.
You want to numb people out so that they will not get up and protest, so that they will not think.
Yep. Well, and look at one of the guys who most obstructed. Bernie was pushing Biden's agenda in that first year. Build Back Better, if it had passed in full, would have been the greatest anti-poverty measure since the 30s, probably surpassing what happened in the late 60s, the aborted war on poverty that Martin Luther King said was being aborted because of the war in Vietnam. But this would have been so huge, and the guy who obstructed that was Joe Manchin. Mm-hmm. And no one's got more poor whites than Joe Manchin. His state is impoverished. And he's got no plans for that state, but he's enriching himself with these pipelines. And his family's very rich from the, coal and other pipelines. So you're right. Obviously, all poor people of all colors, as your dad and as Martin Luther King, they're all going to catch hell, but they get the whites to vote for the right-wing demagogues. And then everyone catches hell.
But then the Democrats don't fight. Because it's not. No. It's not. I don't think Joe Biden is weak as much as he is strong as a corporatist. He's a corporatist, and that's it. Yeah, and that's what we see. No doubt. And I think we have to reframe that and rephrase that. He's not weak. He is a strong corporatist, and he is not supportive of populist ideas and ideals. That is not what he does. We have to push him on that. But that's politics, everybody. I'm not mad.
Yeah, you said it right, and if you look at Roots Action, we've made that point. Yes. He's been, he's tied to the banks in Delaware. He's always been. His idea of getting tough is, the crime bill. He doesn't get tough on the lawbreakers who are in the 1%, who are ripping everyone off and laughing all the way to the bank. He's always protected the 1% of lawbreakers, but he's been very, very tough, especially on young blacks who are law breaking. It's sad.
The racial jungle.
It's very sad.
The racial jungle that he didn't want his children in if they were in desegregated schools. Come on. But that having been said, I can deal with all of that. When you get into a place where you govern, I need you to do what I need you to do. That's it. See, because I don't fall in love with candidates and people who hold office. I don't have time for that. I can do that in my personal life. In my political life, I need you to do what I need you to do. And so I think that given where he is polling, where he is consistently polled, he has not been strong since he's been president. I think that you're right. He needs to step aside because you need to at least open up the process so we can hear the debates. I want to hear from Marianne. I want to hear from Bobby Kennedy. I want to hear.
Yeah, they're trying to stop all debates. I mean, if the process had been more open, I mean, I know Cornel West. Mm-hmm. He should be in the Democratic Party. I'd want to see him in a debate in the Democratic Party. And now this could be really divisive if he goes forward with a third-party bid. If the process were more open, maybe he would have joined. If he knew there would be debates within the Democratic Party, maybe he could have been kept in the Democratic Party rather than something that could be very, very divisive and dangerous in some swing states if he's on the ballot.
Well, the reason he's running is because they have locked out all progressive conversations in the Democratic Party. I talked to him last night.
And to fully disclose, he's a very good friend of yours, right? To fully disclose, he's a friend of yours.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good friend. I talked to him last night. Yeah. And the reason he's running is because the Democrats have made it impossible for the progressives to even get anything on the platform that's progressive. Yeah, so you have to run as an outside candidate just to stir up a conversation about where the platform should be going on the other side.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I just fear what might happen if it's a very close 50-50 election or 49-49. But again, Cornell was an early endorser of RootsAction.org. I worship the guy. I love everything he said. I heard him on Democracy Now! What was it, on Wednesday? He's always incredible. I would have loved to see him come into the Democratic Party. But
the Democrats need to open up the Democrats need to open up the process.
That's for sure.
I love to see him and Elizabeth get her ideas out, and Bernie gets his ideas out, and everybody with a great idea should have an audience with the people. We don't circumvent the process and then get mad because somebody's running outside the process.
Well, that's why you see the miracle that Reverend Jackson was. But Reverend Jackson also brought his people to the party, and that's what you have to do. Because we were on a campaign. I remember the Southern Crusade in 1983. Reverend registered the first go round, 2.5 million people. So he didn't go inside the party and get their voters. He brought them to the party. Then he that's what you have to do it with these people, because it's awful.
But at least they had debates. But at least they had debates when Reverend Jackson ran, and he could get his ideas out on the table, and he could push the party to the left. They got it set up now, so they're not even debates. It's a coordination. It's not a convention.
Oh, no, I'm clear on that, but that's what they had then. But what Reverend had was so many people getting registered. So he was registering so many people, because you got to do all things at one time. And he had tied up these churches in so many pieces that the Democrats found it very hard to ignore him. Now what they've done, because after Carter, they started putting pieces in place so they could end an insurgent candidacy. And so after Reverend Jackson, they did the same thing. Because these are both right, Mr. Cohen. I mean, they're both private entities, and they want their people. They don't want you. They don't want me.
And I remember when the New York Times was so biased against Reverend Jackson in '87, we demanded a meeting with the publisher, and we got it. And we went in there with what was an indictment. Here are the adjectives used about Jesse Jackson. You keep asking, why is he running? You don't ask that about any of the other candidates. They're running to be president. We went to the publisher. I was telling my daughter this last night about how we demanded this meeting with the legendary Punch Sulzberger, Arthur Punch Sulzberger. Yeah. And me and two colleagues from FAIR got in there, and we brought about 8 copies of our indictment of New York Times coverage of Reverend Jackson as a candidate, and said, here's how it's different than how you're covering the other candidates. And I mean, that was a big hurdle. I mean, by 87, the party was more, because of what had happened in 84, the party didn't have as many tricks to use against Jesse, but they still had the corporate media always, the bias was so severe that was their main ally, in helping other candidates over Jesse. And who'd we end up with? Was it Dukakis?
Oh my gosh! You remember him when they put him in that little tank that he could barely raise his head out?
Yeah.
Oh wow!
Really bad.
Come on, man.
Really bad. That's a horrific memory. Please, I wish you hadn't brought up that visual image again.
Sorry, the optics with his helmet on his head. I just said, we've lost. It was too much.
Yeah.
It was too much of an election.
And the question you're talking about back then was, what does Jesse Jackson really want?
Yes.
That was the question.
That was the headline.
What does Jesse Jackson really want? Mm-hmm. And Reverend Jackson, I want what everybody else wants. I want to be the president, but they couldn't fathom that.
And then I remember a New York City headline. We made fun of it at the fair office. I think it was New York Newsday. It might have been the Daily News. Jesse and the Jews. And we said, what is that? A new rock band? Because, I'm Jewish. Bernie's Jewish. All the Jewish progressives I know were living their lives to get Jesse elected.
Carolyn Kasdan on stage.
Yeah, of course. But,
come on.
Yeah, but they couldn't acknowledge that. We got written out of the media too, because they had to make it seem like, all Jews oppose Jackson, when some of the most fanatical white supporters of Jesse were Jewish, but we didn't get into the press.
Oh, no, not at all. Because when Bernie popped up and then when he got punched in the face, we were like, oh, no. Yeah. And he said, oh, no, that'll come with it. You don't have to worry about this. And I was like, but Mayor Sanders, because he was mayor at the time, this is terrible. Yeah. He said, honey, you have to understand, this comes with the territory. He said, your father's getting punched every day. Just let's continue. And, and then, only in America. I don't know if Todd is still there, Dwight.
I'm still here.
Mr. Cohen, check this out. I'm riding down the elevator with my father. This is in 84. We're in California. It's May. We're getting ready for the California primary. And so we got to California, and you saw that the Asian community had come out full force. They were they were running the campaign, and the progressive Jewish community. I mean, they were running the campaign, and the progressive Arabs. Casey Kasem. Part of our campaign was based in his and Gene Kasem's home. Yep. That's how our people stayed there, because we had no money, and they said, no, come on over here into our little fabulous mansion. We're going to get this man elected. Well, we're coming down the elevator, and my father said, guess what his name is? And I was like, okay. And he was the guy who flanked my father on the right. That was important because they held the Uzi, which was an Israeli-made submachine gun, which at the time was the most powerful in existence. When you touched it, it would fire off hundreds of rounds. So you had to have someone of a certain character, disposition, skill set, all of that. And I said, okay, well, who is it? And he was a tall, handsome guy. And he said, he had a very thick accent. He said, my name is Jaime. I said, what? Well, look, that's who, huh? He said, oh, I'm Israeli American. I said, wow. He said, that's nothing. He said, that's my name. I said, okay. Yeah. These are the things that we had to deal with, okay? And then he went from Thunder, his code name in 1984, to Pontiac in 1988. And Pontiac is the acronym for poor old N-word thinks it's a Cadillac.
Oh, God.
Yeah, but he kept on running. I mean, because that came out at the beginning of the campaign in late 87. And he said, and I'm still running. Let's go. He had an amazing ability to rise above all that foolishness. And you can't make this stuff up, but you know what? We kept on going. the Jewish community, those who came out for Reverend, absolutely came out and supported and did not back down. The Asian American community, the black folks who came out, because all black people did not support him. It took a rainbow. And for that, I'm grateful. And you were one of those persons. And I tell you what, we were very excited when you went and confronted Punch Salzberger about their biases. That was like the talk of the campaign.
I talked to your dad shortly after my meeting with the New York Times publisher, and I'm pretty sure his mom must have been alive at that
she
point.
Was. She was.
Right?
That's right. That's right.
Because he told me that he had a conversation with his mom about the media and how they were treating him. But yeah, Casey Kasem, Los Angeles has always had a progressive Jewish community, more than New York City, more than elsewhere. And the Arabs and the Jews in L.A. had always worked together and been critical of Israel together. And Casey was one of the first supporters of FAIR when we started in the mid '80s, and we had fundraisers at his mansion. And I think part of the reason he loved us is because of the work we could do on behalf of Jesse. And, trying to be a shield against all of this bias. What does Jesse Jackson really want? Yeah, that's the headline. That was the headline we got tired of seeing.
It was, and it was a wonderful time because we had some wonderful people. My father married Gene and Casey Kasem. And
that's right. That's right.
Because we actually uttered the word that no one dare mention at the time, which was Palestinians, because well, in the Bible we understand that we are all locked up together. You're promised a seat at the table in the presence of your enemy, as my parents explained it. Well, because your enemy is God's child too, so get over it. Get over yourself. Yeah. We all have to figure it out because you'll find out your enemy is the person with whom you have the most in common. So, it was a glorious time, met some wonderful people like you, people we didn't even know we had so much in common with. And it was a real blessing. I mean, Todd, you've been listening very, very intently. Do you have anything to say, Reverend Dr. Yuri Esquire?
Well, I have been listening intently. And what I've been thinking about around the core question is this is the rub. And I think we have to go back and look at Reverend's runs in 84 and 88 to kind of look at how he was able to navigate an institutionalist structure and framework with a transformationalist mission. That you got to figure out how do you win. You can't play the game according to rules that don't exist. You got to master the rules as they are to change the rules so that they become what they need to be. And I think that's the dilemma that we're facing. It's a math problem, always has been, and it continues to be. What is the plan if you don't get a step-aside Joe and you end up with a potential rematch of the 2020 election? And the aftermath of the real fight is going to be, while we get enamored by the big shiny thing at the top, who's going to control the fiscal policy in the House, who's going to control the nominations in the Senate, and you don't have a favorable Senate map because a presidential election is not a singular thing. It is a singular outcome of 50 different things called state elections for president. If we do not have a comprehensive analysis, Reverend always looks at maps. He understands the layout of the map. What does the map tell us about what the messaging needs to be so that we can make sure we mobilize around the ideals and not the cult of personality and make that part of the party's transformation? Because otherwise we're trying to figure out who do we find as an appealing candidate. Well, that's not a who, that's a what. What are they talking about? And if we don't have a what that is foremost in the mind, then the who is not really going to matter because everything points back to protecting the institution as it is which is why we have Donald Trump as the radical transformation. He says, I'm an anti-institutionalist. And he's got folks, and while it may not be the appeal, we don't have a counter to it on the other side. And I'm not sure, unless I'm looking at something wrong, the names that would typically be raised as those who might run for the Democratic nomination are not going to appeal as anti-institutionalists, which is why Dr. West, who for my colleagues, we grew up on prophesied deliverance. We grew up on race matters. We studied that in seminary. We heard from him. We understand that part of the challenge is going to be the labeling that's going to come right behind it, because Dr. West has not been afraid to talk about being an anti-institutionalist by definition. And so if there's nothing to counter that, if there's nothing to anchor that, if you don't have a kind of Jesse Jackson-esque kind of appeal. I learned the rules to master the rules so that I don't just become prisoner to the rules. I change the structure for the better. That's got to be the strategy, and that's the one thing I'm not hearing from anybody that's going to cause any group to try to mobilize and coalesce around change. It's just not going to happen. And so if we don't get real clear, real precise, and very intentional right now, the only radical alternative to the institution as it exists will continue to be Donald Trump. And that's the one thing that we cannot afford to let happen. We've got to have something to counter it. And I'm inclined to say, all right, Cornel West, whether he's in the party or out of the party, if he raises the level of the conversation to be about transformation and not just merely institutionalization, then I think you leave the two parties to have the very close conversations that they would rather have anyway. And nothing's going to change in the short term or in the long term. That's going to continue to be our problem.
Does anyone? Well, Mr. Cohen?
Well, I listened very intently, and I mean, it's dire. There isn't such a figure or a movement now. And we are sort of playing defense. And what if Biden doesn't step aside and the other Democrats remain fairly placid and cowardly, and it's Trump and Biden rerun again?
Then the corporatists win, and we will lose.
Yeah.
And Americans are going to have to grow up in their politics and get involved. Really.
Yeah. Well, you know, the one exciting thing, and it won't survive if Trump wins or if DeSantis wins, and they start moving against the fundamentals of democracy and elections. But one of the exciting things, and I see it because I'm in New York, is the squad of these young members of Congress. They are institutional. They did get elected. They are working on committees, and they're for transformation. And they're all people of color. I mean, Jamal Bowman is incredible, an educator from the Bronx, and AOC is incredible, and Cori Bush, she's an activist from Black Lives Matter, and now she's in Congress. So there are exciting things happening. All of those folks are too young and inexperienced to run for president, but you know, if our democracy can survive, you know, a few years, and if climate doesn't get us, and a nuclear war over Ukraine doesn't get us, then you know that force, that's like the Rainbow Coalition in Congress is the squad, you know, and that's the only bright spot. But I'm very pessimistic. I'm just very pessimistic. I'll go down to my dying day fighting for progressive candidates, fighting against racism. But I'm very pessimistic about the future.
Well, let's not be pessimistic. Let's keep hope alive. You know, it's always darkest before the dawn. And what we're doing, we're digging down to the depth of the problems. I mean, it was never going to, these issues were never going to be resolved in a generation, because it took us generations to get here. And you know, and it's going to take us some time to get out. But I think as long as we keep pushing and teaching and sharing our experiences, that helps the generation behind us and the generations behind them. They just need to know what has been done. They need to know how Reverend and you and people came together and organized those campaigns in the face of, within that context, formidable odds. Formidable. But so what? Reverend said, if I don't run, I'm guaranteed to lose. If I do run, I just might win. And he didn't say I, he said we. And that's the difference. Because Reverend was always about, when I win, you win. And that's what you saw. We haven't had that in a very, very long time. We got a whole lot of I's, and there is no I in team. And we need a team, everybody. We do. But I have to thank you for all of your work, because you've been a blessing to us down through the years. And I thank you. I thank you for your work.
I thank you and your colleagues on this program. I've learned a lot just from listening closely.
Well, they wanted to be with you today when they heard about, wait a minute, don't run, Joe, and then step aside, Joe. They said,
yeah. You'll be hearing more from us at rootsaction.org. I was telling my daughter, who's 26, and she was active with Bernie. I said to her, before there was Bernie, there was Jesse Jackson, and she knows her history. She's read all about Jesse Jackson.
Does she know your history in it? Does she know that you're part of it?
Yeah, okay. They're less likely to think highly of their own dad, I believe.
Then it's my turn. To talk to her. I'm very serious.
Yeah.
Because
I should have you guys talk.
Absolutely, because Frank Watkins, we lost within the past year.
And Steve Cobble.
Steve Cobble. And Kevin Gray.
Yeah. Yep.
And so, these are the people who we have all worked together, but they need to know the crucial role you played. Because while we're out campaigning, Dwight and Todd, to hear that there is a group that is doing this kind of work, this kind of research, as we are sitting on the campaign bus and on the campaign plane and talking to our press crew and telling them, whatever you're reporting, this is the way it's coming out. And they're like, Reverend, we're not reporting it this way. And Reverend understood the game. But the fact that you were calling them on it, it was validating to people. It was so validating. And thank you for that.
Yeah. My connection to the campaign was through Kevin Gray, Steve Cobble, and Frank Watkins.
Absolutely.
And I want to say that, I no longer with... there's younger people are doing FAIR. You mentioned Jim Norikis and Janine. And FAIR has kept doing this, except your dad only had to deal with the daily press and the nightly news. Bernie had to deal with articles coming after him every hour. So, FAIR did this famous article that's all over the internet. Bernie Sanders attacked 16 different times in 24 hours by the Washington Post. And Bernie would got a printout of that, and he'd wave it at his stump speeches. Look at this. They attacked me 16 times in one day.
Absolutely.
And 16 negative articles in the Washington Post. That's one thing your dad didn't have to deal with. It was only a daily newspaper and a nightly news, and maybe there were a few all-news talk stations on radio. But now you got the internet, and they just savaged Bernie. But yeah, FAIR keeps doing that, and will keep doing that, and it's a blessing that FAIR survives. I'm going to run. It's been a pleasure to talk to everyone and to meet with the two folks. I don't think I'd ever been on a program with them.
Dwight McKee and Reverend Dr. Todd UM connect you, but whenever you want to talk about your campaigns, Step Aside Joe and all of that, know that you have a home here. Please know that.
Right, and remember, Norman Solomon has a new book out on the last 20 years of warfare.
That the U.S.
Yeah, it's coming. The official pub date is tomorrow, and he's, 20 years of war in Africa, in countries we don't even hear about on the news. The book is called War Made Invisible, and that's what drains the federal treasury that could be uplifting poor and working people of all colors, but all the money goes to the military. That's something your dad talked about. Obviously, Martin Luther King in his last year kept talking about the drain on the federal treasury. He called it a demonic suction, sucking the wealth out of our federal budget to war and away from social uplift. At any rate, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure. I'll talk to you folks in the future.
Absolutely.
And I'll make sure that Norman's in touch. See you, Santita.
Absolutely.
Great talking to you.
And my love to your daughter. Thank her for allowing you to be with us today. Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
God bless you. Hey, everybody. I hope you two all have had a good show. Dwight McKee, do you want to say anything before we go? You and Todd?
No, I think Todd just kind of covered everything today, and the other guest, Brother Cohen, and I'm applaud them for being fighting 40 and 50 years.
Oh, boy.
Most people are kind of wonders, but he seemed like he's been out here for quite a while and been very consistent in that. I want to commend him for that.
Very consistent. He's right. It was Steve Cobble, it was Kevin Gray, it was Frank Watkins who found FAIR. They were just amplifying the bias that Reverend was fighting every single day. And that was before his presidential candidacy. They've just done great work down through the years. And I just thank God for them. And Mr. Cohen, he's a really, really good guy. Really has been a good guy, has been a wonderful human being, and has done great work for a long time, and just doesn't stop. But I knew you and Todd were not going to go when I heard about, when you heard about, don't run, Joe. I'll step aside, Joe. You are just terrible, Dwight. But I don't want everyone to know just how awful you are while we're on here on Facebook. So go on and redeem yourself. Say something nice. Oh, okay.
Say it ain't so, Joe.
Let me call my mother and tell her what you said.
I'm going back to find me a popcorn machine for the convention. That's what
Oh, just get that butter. Woo. Oh yeah, it's gonna be on and cracking. Let me tell you something. No, tomorrow. So just look at your phone, Todd, because we're going to have to talk about tomorrow on Wednesday. So just go on and get ready for that. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So just seriously, pull your time. Let me know. I know you got to go to court and all of that.
Not a whole lot of court. This actually tomorrow. The only thing I have in the morning is I will be sworn. I'll be licensed in Illinois as of tomorrow.
Oh, cha-cha.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Okay, well, all right. Well, then you know what.
Got no work to do. So I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, well, I'm sending everybody.
Yeah, I want to follow up with you about Doc's campaign.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Okay, Santita, thank you much.
We love you all.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Love you. Bye.